All right, everybody, what is going on? What is going on? I think I'm a little bit too far to the. Damn it! Hold on. Is that a bit better? Okay. All right. Good enough. Good enough. Good enough. All right, everybody, what's going on? What's going on? Yeah, you guys excited for tomorrow's video? Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, yeah. Tomorrow's video, I think, is going to be a fun one. I think it'll potentially change some perspectives on how people think the arc is going to play out. No, no points. I was right on time. Right on time. Right on time. Um, Close this shit out. We need late points for delays. I think we can go back to doing that. We can go back to doing that. Before the rule was 1 hour, and then I got kind of lazy with that rule. So we'll get back to the rule of like, if I'm gonna delay, it has to be an hour in advance. Hawkeye better, thanks a lot. Reason for Sanji exoskeleton: if Ifrit can't hurt Sanji with only haki, how will it hurt others who use the same haki? I don't know why Oda not give reason for Diable. Um how would it hurt others who use the same haki? How would, oh, I see what you're saying. Cuz like but yeah, I mean you answered it yourself, which is like by that logic he didn't have the exoskeleton for Diable Jambe, right? Therefore, if he kicks anyone with Diable Jambe, as long as their body's as tough as Sanji's, they won't be affected, right? But that's not really how it works, is it? It's just a attack booster, you know? Like by that logic, it's just like, what about Akainu's magma or whatever, you know? Like or just Sabo's fire attacks. Um, in general, if the opponent has haki that's strong enough, it's not gonna work. You know, I think it's adding in complications to a power system that's like an ability that's very straightforward, which is that I have fiery kicks. The fire can get hotter and hotter, but we've never needed some sort of special explanation as to why Sanji's fire can get hotter. If Oda wanted to, he could have just like the same explanation you're giving with Sanji's exoskeleton. Again, it still applies to the haki, right? His best defeat was at the hands of the great Gecko Moria. I don't think Moria ever beat him, even. I think Moria just ran away enough that that was how round one went. Moria just ran away enough that it stopped being a problem. So Zeph can do Diablo Jambe? No, because Zeph has wooden legs. He will burn right off. Sabo mentioned me up. Yeah. I think never mind. Never mind, never mind. All right, let's start rolling. Do we want to do a tier list for these defeats or do we want to do just a straight ranking? I think okay. Here, first let's write down all of Luffy's defeats in the story, right? All of Luffy's defeats. All right, let's do that in order. Yeah, I think tier lists are always more fun. But here we go. Okay, so let's just write down what we've got to work with. Okay, let's just write down what we've got to work with. Roger, Roger coated his wood with hockey. Okay, so we got Smoker. We've got. Oh wait, you know what? Let me before I forget, let me write down a little idea I had for next week's video. Um, okay. Oh wait, hold on. Okay. Anyway, okay. So Smoker Loketown. Do I need to put the arc? Yeah, let's say Smoker at Loketown. Rules are here. Rules. The rules. The rules. Only. How do I say this? Only combat defeats. Not like, I mean, I want to not include things that are like, oh, he got hit with like sleeping gas or some shit. Like, I don't think Luffy has the equivalent of those sort of Yeti Cool Brother type things. Yeah, only combat defeats. Um, I don't know how to make the rules clear. Okay, we'll make the rules clear as we go. Okay, only combat defeat. The rules are uh kind of uh I don't know. They're not fleshed out at the moment. Luffy versus Magellan deserves top three. Who do I think will save Luffy, Morge? Honestly, sincerely, who I think will save Luffy here? You know who I think will save Luffy here? Yeah, put your guesses down. Put your guesses down. Put your guesses down. So we got Smoker at Loketown, Crocodile, round one. Do I have to put down arcs? Yeah, let's do Smoker. We'll just go from top. Crocodile, round two. Um, only combat defeats, battlefield, removal slash villain, escaping uh doesn't count. So I'm not counting NL. I'm not counting NL round one as a loss. I don't count NL round one as a loss. Then we got Aokiji. No. I think it's gonna be Zoro and Sanji. I think it's gonna be Zoro and Sanji. I think there's been so much emphasis on the wings of the king throughout this arc, like so much emphasis about the wings of the king in this arc, right? And where we left off in the story is Luffy completely defeated, right? From what it looks like. Maybe he gets back up next chapter. We don't know. But from what it looks like, Luffy's completely defeated, but it's juxtaposed with Zoro and Sanji clearly being portrayed in a very positive light, like they're about to get big moments and power ups, right? Like that's where all three things happened concurrently at the same time as Loki was taking on what do you call Emu, and then Luffy came in to fight Emu and stuff like that. At the same time, Zoro versus Somers and Sanji versus Killingham had already began, right? So those things are concurrent. So much emphasis on Wings of the King. It has been made crystal clear by Oda that Zoro and Sanji are about to get big power-ups and master their Conqueror's Haki. I think they're going to come in and give Luffy a hand. They're not going to beat Emu. No, under no means do I think they're going to beat Emu. But I think we're going to see a much stronger version of Zoro and Sanji show up that, alongside the help of the other Straw Hats, presumably Ragnar, stuff like that, will stall Emu a little bit. We got Aokiji, Lucci. I think he doesn't lose the rest of Enies Lobby. I don't count Moria as a loss. I'm gonna count Sabaody. Who does he lose to there? Kuma slash Sentomaru. Damien Wright says, you see their fights being quick then? I think that their fights will be quicker than their... My feeling is that their fights, the way they've been set up, is going to be quicker than King and Queen. I think the way Oda's been writing Sommers and killing him has been very disrespectfully towards those characters. Like, he's not trying to write them as really strong characters. He's been writing them almost as gimmick characters so far. And their gimmick is they can't be damaged without Conqueror's Haki. I don't think that we're in for like. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be easy for Zoro and Sanji, but I think that they're both gonna have like a click moment where they get it down, and then they come out much stronger. Zoro might genuinely low diff Sommers. That's the thing, like, Sanji already low diffed killing him. You can say with help and everything like that, but it was clear that those Strats had no trouble with killing him whatsoever, right? And Oda's kind of made it clear that Sommers, a lot of characters just beat up on Sommers. This feels more like, to me, everything points to Zoro and Sanji getting their main showing against Emu, because Sommers and killing him the way that they've been portrayed so far, it feels like it really just is like a pass or fail test of like, well, do you have the Conqueror's Haki to actually damage them? That's all, you know? I don't think combat-wise they can give them that much trouble. He does attributes the loss to Kizaru at Egghead, to be fair. Does he fight Kizaru there? I don't remember. Does he fight Kizaru? Oh, you're talking about Sabaody. He doesn't lose to Kizaru at Sabaody, though. Kuma Sentomaru. Kuma Sentomaru. Amazon Lily, he doesn't really lose to anyone. Tiptier Tavisa, thanks for 2. I'm back. Where's the Parking Podcast Morch? It's coming out. It's coming out. Slight delay with it coming out, but it's coming out. Promise. Just give it till tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, you'll be able to listen to it. I had a miscommunication on my end because I bumped the timing of the release a little bit, but I didn't communicate that properly. So it's going to have to be uploaded in the morning. Not to you guys, to my team. I didn't communicate it properly. Empty Man, thanks for the view. Do you think / want Luffy will get a new scar from Emu? Oh, shit. I don't know. I think it's almost arbitrary when Oda decides that Luffy gets a scar or not, because so far he loses and gets like impaled and stabbed a shit ton throughout the story, like Crocodile, Lucci, Crocodile, Lucci, Katakuri. It happens frequently, but only Akainu left a scar. So I wonder, but Emu's using a special sword, so it's hard to say. They would lose in that situation. I mean, I don't think that Zoro and Sanji are set to kick Emu's ass or anything. But stall, sure. Let's get Streamlike's up to 50 real quick. Let's get Streamlike's up to 50. Kuma Sentomaru. Then we got what? Magellan. Then we got Marineford is tricky because he loses a lot in Marineford, right? So it's like Marineford Gauntlet. Yeah, I would just say Marineford Gauntlet. It's just because Marineford, it's supposed to be the cumulative experience. It's not like any single character was responsible for breaking him. It was just, what happens. There's fucking... He doesn't outright lose permanently to anyone in Marineford. I think Kizaru, you could argue at Marineford, because at Marineford, Kizaru is the first one to like knock him out, and then Ivankov gives him hormones to get back up. But he just fights so many people there, right? Like, you could get really granular and be like Momonga and Dalmatian or something like that. Lotus Purple, thanks to the 2. Could Prime Zeph do Diablo Jambe, or is Sanji invented? I feel like Sanji invented. I think Prime Zeph, it's impossible to scale him or rate him, because it's just like, what does that really mean? Yeah, it's just hard to say what that would look like or what that would mean. Oh, Lost. Oh yeah, no, we're not at post time skip yet. Morge, who do you think is the Diddy of the One Piece world? I mean, just by vibes, it would be fucking Doflamingo, right? Like, look at the dude looks like a fucking pimp, right? Like, if you're like if you're just to put all the characters like appearance wise up, it's like, hey, who runs some sort of weird underground sex ring? It's like it's fucking Doflamingo. Who the fuck else, right? Like, But realistically, it's all the celestial dragons, right? So I mean that also includes Doflamingo, but you know what I mean. Like the ditty of the One Piece world is all the celestial dragons. There's like 50 ditties. The Epstein list is real in One Piece. It's just all the celestial dragons. Um, Tornado says base Luffy destroys Zoro and Sanji and Zoro. How can those two do anything to Emu? It's the power up. The idea is they get stronger, right? Like that's what I'm saying. It's not current Zoro and Sanji stalling Emu. We already saw that Zoro and Sanji currently can't do jack shit to Emu, right? So we need the buff. Empty Mind, thanks for the 2. What is the percent chance of Better Call Saul becoming your favorite show? Oh, at the risk of derailing. Let me keep typing, otherwise people are gonna be like, oh, Mort, you're derailing or whatever. I'm really so I just started season 5. No spoilers for season 5. No spoilers for season 5. Just started season 5. I really like Better Call Saul. The ending to season 4 was great. I'm really loving Better Call Saul. At the moment, I still don't see it surpassing Breaking Bad for me. Part of that is shit. I really like Better Call Saul though. I think I need some time. And like I haven't finished it out yet. Right? For me right now, I would say like it's in contention for me alongside Breaking Bad and The Sopranos. Okay, let me finish it out before actually I just want to enjoy it right now without trying to compare too much. Um, and one other thing I want to do, I might rewatch Breaking Bad after I finish Better Call Saul, just to see if it's like nostalgia or what, because I haven't rewatched the show in a long time. But I have been watching clips again. YouTube's been recommending me clips because I'm watching Better Call Saul. And from the clips, I'm remembering, goddamn, like I really love this show. I think at the simple core of it, if I really had to compare at the simplest core of it, I would say that I I like Walter's story arc is just more compelling to me than Saul's. At the same time, Better Call Saul is obviously not just about Saul, and there's like so many great characters. We get more emphasis on like Mike and Gus and stuff like that. I think I like the laser like folk. I think I might value just a singular character arc carried out over an extended period of time. Walter White's might still be in any medium, it might still be my favorite one that I've seen. Not to say that Walter White's my favorite character ever, but just like following a single character's storyline. I think his is just really, really unique and compelling. And it's just, I think also part of it is just Bryan Cranston's acting is, I think he's still the best TV acting performance I've ever seen, overall. There's certain characters who've done better scenes, like I've talked about Eddie Falco from The Sopranos in season 4, episode 10, Whitecaps and stuff. But like, I think overall, Bryan Cranston's acting performance all the way through is like really, really, really strong. And like when I go back and watch clips, I'm just like, the performance is just so nuanced and so like, you can watch clips from the beginning towards the end. Like there's just so much in there. So it's hard to beat that to some degree. But Better Call Saul, like, it's really good in similar ways, and then where Saul's differences with Walt show are also make for really, like a show that has its own identity. It's compelling for different reasons. Um, this might be a hot take, but I think Bob Odenkirk. No, he's a very good actor. He's a really good actor. I think he is regularly outshone acting wise. I love Saul as a character, but I think Bob Odenkirk is outshone acting wise by a lot of the other actors in the show, including Chuck McGill's, whoever that actor was, phenomenal actor. Like, this is splitting hairs. I think this is splitting hairs. I think I might have a different opinion after you give me these last 2 seasons, because already I'm like, I don't know, is Better Call Saul my favorite show? Do I like it more than Breaking Bad? Do I like it more than Sopranos? I don't know. Um, but yeah. Uh, Breaking Bad somehow gets better after you've seen Better Call Saul. I fucking bet. I'm so excited to rewatch Breaking Bad now. I want to get back into it. Solomon Walter, thanks for 7,000. Thanks for the 2. Do you think killing him makes an evil Sanji? That'd be wild. Oh, I wonder if killing him makes Sanji's brothers or some shit like that. Uh, Antwonic49, thanks for the 2. Nacho's an amazing character too. Yeah, I love Nacho. I'd say, okay, without derailing too much, right? I'd say Breaking Bad was very tight, right? In the sense that like it's Walt, Jesse, and then that's the core focus, and then everyone else is like side characters, right? And sure, Skyler, Marie, Hank, even fucking Walt Jr. all good recurring characters, but I think the core cast of Better Call Saul, which is Saul, Kim, Chuck, Mike, Nacho, Gus, uh, this fucking dude Lalo who just showed up. I think that there's a stronger overall cast here. Even fucking Howard. Now, the thing is that with Breaking Bad, a lot of these same characters are also in Breaking Bad, right? So Breaking Bad had some phenomenal side characters like Saul, like Mike, like Gus, but the difference is that now, when we shift over to Better Call Saul, all these, the good it's like they kept all of the great side characters from Breaking Bad, put them in Better Call Saul, gave them much more layered storytelling and screen time and stuff, and then added some other phenomenal characters like Kim, like Chuck, like Nacho, etc. So it's hard to compare, you know? Because if I were to just say ensemble wise, I think I like the ensemble cast of Better Call Saul better um than this gang, you know? But it's close. It's splitting hairs. I don't know. But then the flip side is I find Walt's storyline to be the single strongest character storyline between either show. So it's complicated. Anyway. No spoilers. No fucking spoilers for Better Call Saul. No fucking spoilers, please. Favorite episode in Better Call Saul so far? The last episode, which was like season 4 finale, was phenomenal. But really was the court battle with him and I think it was season 3, episode 5. I think to avoid spoilers. Better Call Saul, season 3, episode 5. The monologue from Chuck there. Yeah. Chicken yeah. Yeah, monologue from Chuck there at season 3, episode 5. Just phenomenal stuff. Anyway, Taptio says, as a big G fan, thanks for the 2. As a big G fan, I knew Brian from Godzilla 2014. Yeah, it was funny because like I watched Breaking Bad and then I obviously watched Godzilla, excited to see Bryan Cranston in that, and it just wasn't the same. I think he was born to really be great in that. What else was he? I think he was in Drive. Was Bryan Cranston in Drive? Bryan Cranston Drive. Yeah, he's in Drive. He's shown up in movies, but he never. It's just not the same as in Breaking Bad. I think that role was just made for him, and he's a character that works best. He's an actor that works best when he can show like very elaborate transformation, or maybe like he just needs a very very nuanced role. I don't know. Zolden, thanks for the 10. Hey, Moore, do you have a preference to how Sanji's Conquersaki should look? I like Black Flames because they fit Blackleg, but would that make his last color-based power-up feel pointless? I don't know. I feel like Oda's probably going to go with something like Black Flames, so I think we should just get used to it. But I love the Blue Flames. And the thing with the Blue Flames is that it's weird, but Oda's always said that Sanji's, like the Straw Hats are symbolized by different colors. So Oda's like Luffy's obviously red, Zoro's green. Oda's always said that Sanji is symbolized by blue, which has always been odd to me, which is because I never really associated Sanji. I've noticed it more recently because in post-time skip arcs, Oda started doing, as people have said, the Power Rangers color scheme, where it's like, every arc, Zoro's wearing some green outfit, Luffy's wearing some red outfit, Sanji's wearing some blue, Nami's wearing whatever, orange, pink, or something like that, you know? Robin's wearing purple, right? But for most of the story, I think I associated Sanji with yellow, as I think a lot of people did, just because of the hair color, right? I think gun to your head, if you asked pre-time skip One Piece viewer, like, hey, what color symbolizes Sanji? They might be like yellow or black because of Blackleg. I think almost no one would say fucking blue, but in Oda's mind, it's always been blue, right? So with Ifrit Jambe being blue, to some degree, that is arguably, how do I say, um, it's fitting. It's like Zoro's final, not Zoro's, like kind of like how Zoro's color is like green. The anime shows it as green for Conqueror's Haki. If you take that as canon, maybe Oda's always wanted Sanji's to be like his main flame color to be blue. Maybe the anime will keep. Maybe the anime once he gets Conqueror's Haki will portray it as like blue Conqueror's Haki that fits the flames. I don't know. It's interesting. Grizzly Adams, thanks for being a Pirate King Chairman for 35 months, man. I love both, but Better Call Saul just takes it for me. The supporting cast is superior in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. Jimmy plus Kim greater than Walt plus Jesse. Also, Michael McKean, Chuck's chickenry monologue is an all-time great. Yeah, that exactly. That's my favorite episode. It's crazy. It's so good. Jimmy plus Kim greater than Walt plus Jesse. This might sound weird, but I actually think that Bob Odenkirk is the weakest link acting wise out of these. I think he's great for like the charm and the comedy and like just feeling very natural in the role. I think he's not as strong for me when it comes to like more moving dramatic scenes where he's still good, but it's just it doesn't feel I don't feel like it's remotely comparable to like Bryan Cranston. But if you're saying Jimmy plus Kim greater than Walt plus Jesse, I really like Kim as a character. In terms of likability, those two characters are way more likable, I think. Jesse frustrated the shit out of me towards the end of the series. And it's like, oh, well, Jesse's been through so much, I get it. But like, he stopped being an enjoyable character for me to watch on screen after a certain point, for me personally. Walter White, I think, is just clearly the strongest character out of this group. But I could see it if you want to say that Jimmy plus Kim are better than Walt and Jesse. And I would kind of lean towards that. Because I like all of these characters quite a bit. Jesse would be the lowest for me personally. Julian Reed, thanks to the two. Zoro and Sanji will also lose. Full crew wake-up call. I just don't think that's the route that... Like, I think if you just look at how Oda left off Zoro and Sanji's scenes with Sommers and killing him, I think it's clearly meant for an optimistic turn, you know? Clearly meant for an optimistic turn. If Oda wants to do, like, a big wake-up call, it's like... Why would he pit them against Sommers and killing him, who are clearly... Like, characters who are clearly portrayed as kind of weak in the grand scheme of things, who need, you know, Omen just to be competitive, and who are only able to like fight back because of their regeneration, you know? I find it very hard to believe, like, just rereading the last, it would be weird because like Zoro has so much faith in Sanji. He's like, oh, killing him will be dead soon. He's telling to Sommers. It'd be really weird for Zoro and Sanji to lose to them. If you're saying that Zoro and Sanji will beat them, then come back and immediately lose to Imu, that's also kind of pointless because Oda already got that out of the way. Like, he had Zoro and Sanji immediately lose to Imu, so it's kind of... It's just a really weird... Like, what is Oda trying to do here? If you want to create a sense of despair, then something like, you know, Sabaody, where it's like everybody's just getting their ass beat back to back to back. This would be kind of weird if it's like everybody just gets thrashed by Imu, but then after that, you're having this really uplifting, like, oh shit, Wings of the King, defeating Sommers, killing him, coming back to fight for their captain, but then just lose again. It's kind of like, just the order of events feels really all over the place. And in general, just feels like very uplifting vibes that Oda's going for post Luffy's defeat, you know? Because now the rest of the Strats are all fired up. Brooks reunited with Shuri. Actually, just wait for tomorrow's video. I actually don't want to explain everything here because I'm not going to be able to give full evidence in depth here, you know? Mort, what are your thoughts on AJ? You mean from The Sopranos? Genuinely the most irritating character in that show. By far. I can't imagine Chad losing. Let's get Streamlabs up to 50 real quick. Let's get the Streamlabs up to 50. Anyway. Okay. Marineford Gauntlet. Yeah, I'll just say Marineford in general. Because that was like sort of a group beatdown of... It's like everybody beat the fuck out of Luffy, you know? Magellan, Marineford, doesn't really lose in Fishman Island that I can recall. Punk Hazard, Caesar. I am not counting Caesar round two, again, because battlefield removal slash villain escaping doesn't count. So I only view Luffy as having one real loss to Caesar. It's just really annoying that it took him 3 times. Again, I don't have the energy for a law rant, but I just think it's fucking insane. Like, I thought I was fucking taking crazy pills during all of Punk Hazard. I'm like, I waited years and hundreds of chapters for Luffy to finally get to like New World level and come out and start fucking shit up. And Oda's first arc in the New World after making us wait so long for Luffy, right? Because keep in mind, this wasn't like just the time skip, right? Luffy had been basically everyone's bitch since around here, right? Around chapter 500, okay? So it's been like over 150 chapters that we've been like, Oda established that Luffy is not ready for the New World and he's a joke compared to the New World all the way back at Sabaody. And then ever since then, it was like a lot more reiteration of that fact, and then training, and then Fishman Island, which doesn't really count, just like it's not even the New World, right? So then finally, when he gets Luffy to the New World, he's having Luffy fight, no exaggeration, a literal, not hyperbolic, a literal clown. And it takes Luffy that we've never fucking heard of, not some hyped up New World character or something like that. He's having him fight a literal clown who it takes Luffy 3 times to defeat, while fucking Trafalgar Law is being airdropped into the story to defeat Smoker, Luffy's longest running rival in the story. Law Law gets airdropped into the story to defeat Smoker before Luffy gets a chance to, while Luffy's instead struggling to defeat this clown, taking him 3 fucking times. Law easily wipes the floor with Luffy's biggest rival, takes that matchup from Luffy, and then Law beats the actual strongest intimidating threat on the island. Again, while Luffy is going round 3, the fucking distance, crocodile level number of attempts, against a fucking clown who we'd never heard of before. It was wild. It was wild. It was fucking crazy. I was just like, oh, and what are the rest of the strides doing? Zoro's fighting the clown's subordinate, who's not even worth using Haki on, and then everybody else is fighting no one. They're just running from gas. While Trafalgar Law is out here defeating Smoker. Do you have any idea how exciting it was, the prospect that Smoker, like, it's hard, you'd have to go back in time, but the prospect that Smoker, of all people, was the first person waiting for Luffy coming out of the time skip was really exciting at the time. It was like, oh my god, Smoker's a vice admiral. Like, this is, Smoker for the longest time was kind of like Luffy's white whale, in a sense, in that we knew that Luffy should beat him at some point. That's what it felt like, right? It felt like Oda was drawing parallels to Luffy and Smoker, Garp, and Roger. It was unanimous consensus that Smoker was Luffy's Garp back in pre-time skip, because that's just the dynamic that Oda wrote. They meet each other over and over again, are always at each other's throats. Luffy has to run away. He can't really beat down Smoker, right? Smoker was Luffy's biggest rival. So Luffy's biggest rival is waiting for him at the first island of the New World. He's a vice admiral now. That's really exciting. We know that Smoker probably knows Haki and everything, so that's the matchup that we're waiting for. And Oda does not give us that matchup. He instead gives it to Law, who just fucking showed up out of nowhere. So Law steals that, and instead he's just like, here's a fucking random ass clown. A random ass clown. Luffy just fights this clown and he doesn't even do well. He fucking loses the first time, doesn't really do, like, he does better the second time, but still it doesn't work. And he has to go 3 fucking rounds with this dude while Law's getting like back-to-back wins against Smoker, and then some dude that's like even like Doflamingo's fucking right hand, even stronger than Smoker, it seems like. Like, it's kind of crazy. Anyway, continuing on. Magellan, Marineford, Caesar. He doesn't lose in the Coliseum at all that I can. He loses to Doflamingo. Oh, I guess I don't need to say Doflamingo round 1, right? Okay, Doflamingo. Who else? Who else? Sanji, I guess. No, only combat defeat. Not that was just Luffy just taking it, you know. Um, this depends if you view the Katakuri fight as no. Luffy never lost to Katakuri. It was just one extend. They took a break in the middle, but it wasn't really a loss, right? Okay, then we get Kaido. Kaido round 1. Kaido round 2. So there's two ways you can look at it, right? You could either look at it Kaido. Okay, you could either look at it as Luffy lost twice to Kaido, or you could look at it as Luffy lost 4 times. Like, there's 2 definitive losses, okay? So the 2 definitive losses to Luffy with Kaido are, Act 1, and then there's obviously, knocked off here. Knocked off the roof, right? But Ragnarok, like, it's like, what was that attack? Like, Kaido hits Luffy. I think he makes Luffy black out here. 3 like Ragnarok attack. It's called Ragnarok, right? Like, it's when Kaido comes up and just smashes his club down on Luffy. I'm not showing my screen? Oh my god. Have I not been showing my screen this whole time? That's crazy. I'm sorry. My god. Nobody said this. Nobody said this. CP0 interference. My god, what? I don't understand. I don't understand. You guys got to say something. You know I'm not good at this technology stuff. You got to say something. To Tier Visa, thanks to the will Elbaf fail conversation feels so knee jerky. Yeah, I mean, it takes me back to like. It's funny because like it takes me back to in Wano, right? So during the Onigashima raid, there were like. I think anytime something bad happened to the crew, or anytime something bad happened to Luffy, right? People were like, "Oh my God, Morge, it's happening! The raid's failing and stuff." And to me, it was just like, no, this, if anything, is counter evidence to my theory. The raid, it's predicated on everything going too good, and then things going to shit, right? Something standard like I remember when Kaido knocked Luffy off the roof, and Kaido's like, this is really not going to be enough. It's not going to have an effect on anyone's morale. This doesn't really mean jack shit. Everybody's like, Morge, the raid's failing. I'm like, no, this actually seems more standard. This seems like just like not that different than like Luffy being defeated by Crocodile on the rooftop or whatever, you know? This actually just seems more like in the flow of the natural events of the arc. Maybe I should have abandoned the whole raid fail theory right then. Who knows? But like bad things happen. Like that's supposed to happen over the course of a One Piece arc, like over the course of a finale. Like things aren't just supposed to go swimmingly the whole time. It's when things are going super swimmingly, that's when things are not good. It's when things are going too good. That's when it's like, oh shit, the other shoe's probably about to drop, At least in most stories, right? So to me, it's kind of just like Luffy. Yeah, Luffy. It's the same way. Like Luffy getting stabbed by Imu here, to me, is not much different than like Crocodile round 1, Crocodile round 2. To me, it's more just like this is standard stuff that we kind of just see throughout arcs. This is just making the finale more dramatic. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I'm just like zooming out. It would be if everything's looking really bad right now. Then I'm like, oh, Oda's trying to create a sort of arc of defeat. But to me, everything else is kind of like on the upswing. The only negative is Luffy being taken out by Emu right now. But it seems like every other event that's about to happen after this is positive, right? Sanji defeating Killing him, getting Conqueror's Haki. Zoro defeating Sommers, probably mastering his Conqueror's Haki. Brooks Shuri reunion. Ragnar's still alive and kicking. We know Usopp's supposed to get some big moment. Loki's not even taken out or anything like that, right? Loki's still fucking up and like making funny commentary on the fight and everything like that. So I don't know. To Future Visa, thanks for two. What could Loki do in the final war to make you feel same? Shame? Same? I don't know. I don't know what. Oh, you're saying like same as like law? I mean, it would be Loki beating Blackbeard or some shit. Luffy's longest Smoker was Luffy's longest running like pirate rival, and Oda or like marine rival, and Oda immediately goes and is like, "Here you go, Law. You have no fucking relationship to Smoker." Luffy has so much relationship with Smoker. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of chapters of anticipation for Luffy finally getting a win over Smoker, but we don't need to do that. How about fucking Trafalgar Law beats Smoker instead, while Luffy beats a fucking gas cloud? Oh, actually, scratch that. How about Luffy fucking loses to a gas cloud for no fucking reason? It takes like a whole fucking arc to beat this dude. Anyway. Damien writes, says, didn't Kaido say the Alliance wouldn't believe Luffy was dead if he didn't show them his head? And then when he beat him before Gear 5, he just left Luffy's body on the roof? There's so many fucking things, man. There's so many fucking things. It's fucking crazy. He comes down, he's like, Strahd's dead. And people are like, we don't believe you. And he's like, you should just believe me. It's like, dude, you already know why they won't believe you. What's wrong with you? I am God 7833. Thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 39 months. Do you think we'll still get an Usopp moment that directly is with Loki? Like maybe Usopp sees through Loki's lies and Loki calling Usopp brave? Maybe. Yeah, I mean, maybe. That could be cool. If only we had a video analyzing these blunders. You will get a video analyzing these blunders. CP0 interference. And then I think it's just Emu, right? That's the last loss. Okay, so the Kaido losses, do we rate each one of these? I want to add no no outside let me look at the Ragnarok fight again. Hold on. I kind of want to say like there should be straight losses. Straight losses, no where the part of the reason I want to remove the CP0 loss is because that one wasn't on Luffy. It's actually on Luffy, not external circumstances. Does that make sense? So I kind of want to remove the round 4 fight cuz like or I kind of want to remove at least this one cuz that's just like I'm kind of talking about like humbling moments, you know, where Luffy is shown to be inferior to the opponent he's up against, you know? This isn't that. I think Kaido would have won if it played out, but it didn't actually happen, right? So he was never established as, you know, it's not it wasn't a actually, yeah, you know what? We can make it simpler. Only combat defeats, only 1v1s. There we go. There we go. So that takes this out of the equation. No longer 1v1. Where's Apu literally one-shotting Luffy? I mean, Luffy's still alive and kicking after that. Or not alive, he's always alive, but like he's still conscious and everything. Um, hold on. Here, let's take a look at Ragnarok. Okay, so what happens here is hits him, beam, Ragnarok. Big Mom sure does fall a lot. Yeah, I feel like this is a defeat, right? Like Luffy's out. I feel like this is a defeat, right? It's just very brief because he's up and at him again half a chapter after. I don't know. What do you guys think? Um, here, let me just put it to poll. All right, let me put it to poll. Is Kaido's Ragnarok a defeat for Luffy? Yeah, we'll just go by the poll. Uh, Mitchum 28 thanks to 2. Which big three protagonist loses the most? I'm gonna go like my first instinct is Ichigo. I want to exclude things like how to explain this. So, for example, if we were to be like, I want to talk about like on-screen. If we say on-screen losses, because you could argue something like, I don't know, Naruto lost X number of times to Sasuke in training or something like that. I don't know if that actually happened, but like, I'm just thinking back. I'm like, if we went like in One Piece, you could kind of play this game and be like, well, who loses more, Luffy or Zoro or something, right? And on screen, I think Luffy's experienced a lot more losses. But then, if you want to be technical, you could be like, well, Zoro's had 2001 losses to Kuina, you know. So that's Zoro kind of has more losses than anybody probably in the story, right? So if we go by like in narrative losses and we don't and we kind of, have some sort of gray area for characters having to lose multiple times in training scenarios or something like that, right? I'm not saying this necessarily apply. You could say like, well, Luffy in the time skip, maybe he lost a bunch of times or something like that to different animals. I don't know. Yeah, if we just go with like simple like notable on screen or like clear on screen losses, I feel like it's gotta be Ichigo, right? It's gotta be Ichigo. I think I could rattle off all of Ichigo's losses right now. Uh, Ichigo. Let's play this, right? Ichigo. And I'm probably missing some. I don't. Okay, I'm hazy on the first section of the story, so might have lost to one slash more of the early hollows, but maybe not. Let's just put that as a possibility, okay? Then we go Renji slash Byakuya. Then we go Do we count him losing to Urahara in training? Urahara in training? I don't know. Let's say that's okay. You know what? Let's be real clear. Let's just do concrete losses, right? Ones that I'm definite about. This is the Jin. Um, beats Ikaku, beats Renji, tie with Kenpachi. It seems like he's gonna lose to Byakuya, but gets bailed out, so I won't put that down. Okay, so he's actually good for a bit. I think Soul Society Ichigo is good. It's when we move on out of Soul Society that things get ugly. Yami. Grimjow 1. Grimjow 2. I think he loses to the Vizards, right? In training? Vizards? Yeah, he loses. No, he loses to the Vizards. They all pin him before he can turn into a Hollow, right? So Grimjow 1, Vizards, Grimjow 2. Goes to Hueco Mundo. Let's leave out the losses to his inner hollow or whatever. I forget if he has concrete losses or what. Goes to Hueco Mundo. Loses to Ulquiorra. Loses to Neutra. Um, we could give him a pass. I don't know. I guess he wins the next Ulquiorra fight, right? He even nearly loses to that. No, no, no. We'll leave it. We'll leave it. Loses to Yami. Loses to Aizen. Oh, whoops. I forgot about the previous Aizen loss, right? So, uh, Jin, Aizen 1, Yami, Grimjow, Aizen, Yami 2, Aizen 2. Um, then he's good, right? Then he definitely loses at least once during Fullbring, maybe more, right? Then we get into this, loses to Hash, Yuhabak slash Hash Walt, right? This is the Yuhabak slash Hash Walt. Then goes, does his training, comes back, loses to Yuhabak again. We're going by anime now, right? So loses to Yuhabak again, loses to Ishida. Then he gets back up. Then he loses to Askin, right? And so this is 16. And you might be saying, Morge, that's not that much different than Luffy's, right? That's not that much different than Luffy's. You would be, oh, well, we also only loses to Yuhabak again, right? Well, the manga might change that. No, I doubt the manga is going to change that part. It does. That's probably going to happen. No, you know what? I'll be generous. I'll be really generous to Ichigo and say that. Sorry, the anime might change that, right? So I'll be really generous to Ichigo and say the anime might change it. Maybe he gets Yuhabak on the third time around. Okay, we don't know. Most likely, there's a third loss in here. Maybe not. Might have been some more losses towards the beginning to Hollows that I don't remember. Don't know how many times he lost during Fullbring. So it's at least, let's say it's at least 16. Okay, at least 16. You might be saying, Morge, that's similar to Luffy, right? Here's the problem. One Piece is literally twice as long as Bleach. 2 times as long as Bleach. All right? Meaning that Ichigo's loss rate is and we've it's more than double Luffy's, right? More than double Luffy's, and we're probably missing some other stuff here, right? So Ichigo, yeah, a lot of it is just a lot of Bleach is just Ichigo losing. A lot of Bleach is just Ichigo losing. And when I say that Bleach is twice, or One Piece is twice the length of Bleach, that's really underrepresenting it because that's just going purely by chapter count, right? A One Piece chapter has arguably twice the content of a Bleach chapter. I'd say somewhere between 1.5 to 2 times the content of a Bleach chapter. So really, it's like if you look at actual story length, I would argue that One Piece as it is right now is 3 times the length of Bleach, story wise. You know, I think it's about 3 times the length of Bleach. But Ichigo still has clearly more losses than Luffy in that span of time, so it's just kind of insane. Anyway, Okay, we're keeping Kaido's Ragnarok. We're gonna keep Kaido's Ragnarok. We're gonna get rid of the CP0 loss because that's not a 1v1 then. Well, at the same time, then you could argue that Kaido round 2 wasn't a 1v1. Um, no, but the interaction was 1v1, right? They were kind of squaring up against each other then. But then Kuma sent Amaru and Marineford. Maybe I shouldn't remove the... Okay. Only... Yeah, 1v1s, it's complicated, right? Uh... Luffy clearly, fairly uh beaten by villain. Let's do that. Let's do that. All right, so here's our list. Here's our list. Tip tier Trevisa, thanks for 2. One Piece only 2x bleach length by chapter, 1372. 682 times 2. But if you, I already explained, if you account for the fact that One Piece has significantly more content than a Bleach, like, I'm honestly being generous to Bleach here, right? So let's, Bleach chapter, what, 6, let's say 650 or something like that, right? Here, let's just put this side by side, okay? So here's a Bleach chapter. This is what's happening in one page of Bleach, right? Let's just, like, it's not really comparable in terms of how the story is progressing, you know? These panels that are happening here are things that Oda would do in a corner, right? Or like a tiny little strip. I feel like I don't really need to make a case here, you know. It's I would argue that saying that One Piece is twice the amount of story as Bleach is a severe understatement. I would, if we were to put this all together, I would bet that it's closer to 3x. I would bet that it's closer to 3x. It's you know, because page like chapters are one way to compare, but if you look at actual story progression being through panels, Bleach is typically going to have a few panels per page. Like 4 panels per page is like, I'm gonna correct myself. I feel confident saying that in terms of story time, One Piece has 3 to 4x the amount of story that's covered as Bleach. I think I can confidently say that. I don't think that's an unfair thing to say. All right, so we got a list of 14 losses. We're gonna do a little tier list for this. We're gonna do a little tier list. Hold on. We'll do a little tier list. Is there anything anybody wants to dispute here? Any points of contention? Any points of contention here? Speak now or forever hold your peace. If there's any points of contention. Let me pick one iconic image for each Luffy loss. One clear image for each Luffy loss. Luffy's only lost. I mean, like Marineford is a lot of losses, right? So we're just shortening it for the sake of time, right? So we understand that Luffy's lost more than 14 times, but Marineford, it's kind of like if a loss, like he doesn't really get many. I think Marineford, the only true extended 1v1 he had, or the only time he's truly put down is by Kizaru, you know, like knocked out. So you could argue Marineford different ways, you know. Like fucking Momonga and Dalmatian get some hits in, and Luffy isn't able to get some hits back, but is that a loss, right? Um, I don't know. It's hard to say. Sorry, let me show the list again. We got Crocodile round 1. When does he lose to Doflamingo? Yeah, so that's one of the more forgettable losses. This was around the time that I remember it was like, so I've been hoping for a while, because I like coming out of the time skip, I was wondering like what's the big like first big classic One Piece arc gonna be, and kind of realized it's not Fishman Island. Kind of realized it's not really gonna be Punk Hazard. But I was really excited for the Doflamingo fight, for the Doflamingo battle, right? So super excited heading into Dressrosa. Um, but in Dressrosa, how do I say this? Like in Dressrosa, I was wanting, I was hoping it would be. I've talked about this in past streams. I was really hoping it would be as dramatic as previous, um, storylines. And one of the things that really helps is when Luffy suffers a sort of devastating loss in the story. Um, Luffy fights Doflamingo at the halfway point of the story, the midpoint, like Oda does with most One Piece arcs, and Luffy loses, but it's a very quick loss. It's not that devastating of a loss. It's kind of like Doflamingo just slaps him around a little bit, but it lasts just half a chapter or something like that. It lasts half a chapter, and then Pika actually kicks them all out of the castle, and then that's basically then it becomes the whole plateau thing where like Luffy has to get back to Doflamingo, you know. So it's not really a super memorable and dramatic loss. So I think all through Dressrosa, because this was before I had a YouTube channel, so I wasn't like sitting down to like go through all of my thoughts like in depth. But during Dressrosa, I could kind of feel like, this doesn't feel like the old days. I guess I would say like for some reason the Doflamingo loss just didn't hit me as hard. And nowadays I can easily go back and be like, okay, obviously it doesn't hit as hard because it's missing a lot of the components that made the pre-time skip losses so crazy and dramatic. Um, but at the time, I was just like, am I confused? Like, why don't I feel as strongly? Like, why something about Dressrosa just didn't feel as like dramatic to me for Luffy and the Straw Hats as other storylines. All right, Aokiji. Man, Luffy's had some good losses. I think I like the fact that when Oda does have Luffy lose, it's pretty a lot of the times it's pretty memorable, because that's kind of what comes with writing a protagonist that wins the vast majority of the time. It does make the times that the hero loses hit that much harder. Like you could say like, oh, Luffy, because even Luffy's first loss with Smoker, it's a pretty tame loss as far as things go. Like Smoker's got him captured, but it's not like Luffy's injured, like deeply injured or anything like that. Like Luffy brushes it off pretty easily. But that's kind of what makes when Luffy loses to Crocodile for the first time, which is like really deep into the story, it does hit hard because it's just like holy shit. Like we don't normally see Luffy put into that position. Do I prefer Wano over Dressrosa? Um, no, but I would say that I think Wano's good parts are stronger than Dressrosa's good parts in my opinion, but I think Dressrosa I consider to be the much better arc overall. Like I just have so many critiques of Wano. Um, but at the end of the day, Wano is the conclusion to a really big storyline, so it's gonna have very momentous events like Gear 5 and stuff. Or Roger laughed, like really powerful scenes like that. But Dressrosa has got some good shit too. It's just not the same. I think it's not the same. Yeah, I'd say Wano's great moments, like the high moments, are better, but like the actual reading experience, the thematic construction, the way the narrative flows, sense of drama, stakes, etc. Wano's, in my opinion, really not good for its place in the story as the climax to the biggest One Piece storyline that we've ever had. And I'm not talking about Wano itself, like just the 150 chapters of Wano. Every single thing since they entered the New World is leading towards Wano. So it just has a different sort of payoff that's required, you know? Whole Cake Island sucks. I like Whole Cake Island. Whole Cake Island, for me, it had all the makings of a classic One Piece arc. I think Oda just met. This is something I've talked about in the podcast, in the Yonko podcast, which is, I think, okay, so look at this, look at this. So, generally speaking, every One Piece arc, here, hold on. Right, so if we have a little list of all One Piece arcs, um, man, yeah, like, look at this little list of all One Piece arcs, right? So this is something I think I kind of, um, one of the simple reasons that Oda has had so much success, aside from being like a prolific writer in terms of creativity, right? Is, as we know, that he reuses arc formulas a lot, right? And in general, pretty much every arc is going to conclude with the heroes defeating the villains, right? Um, right. So he's able to hit the same beats to close out arcs over and over again to great success. It always ends with Luffy beating up the big bad guy and a sense of triumph, right? Now, there's a couple exceptions, all right? The exceptions being, obviously, Sabaody and Marineford, right? Sabaody and Marineford are the two big exceptions, okay? And Sabaody and Marineford, Oda goes the other way, where it's like, okay, this time the heroes don't win; they completely lose, right? Devastating, right? So Oda has success with his victory formula, right? He does that over and over again, and then the two times that he's gone hard left turn the other way, which is like heroes just lose, Sabaody and Marineford, that's also been to great success. It's so jarring, particularly because we're so used to the victory formula, that the sharp left turn hits that much harder, right? So good stuff. Now there's two arcs where Oda goes for something different. Whole Cake and Egghead. In Whole Cake and Egghead, Oda doesn't resolve those storylines with the heroes actually managing to beat or overcome the primary villains. Luffy does beat Katakuri, but even that's kind of like a shaky sort of win. And Katakuri is not the main villain of Whole Cake Island, Big Mom is, right? So Whole Cake and Egghead are interesting because they're the two arcs where Oda doesn't go with one of his bread and butter sort of guaranteed storylines, right? You can say, well, what about Zoe and stuff like that? Let's put Zoe to the side. Stuff like Zoe, Zoe and like Reverse Mountain. Let's call those reset arcs. It's not really about beating anybody. Fine. So let's put those in a separate category, right? But in storylines that have significant conflicts, right? Generally, Oda's very good at writing storylines with the heroes beating the bad guys, right? And if he decides to go the opposite direction, where it's like just devastating loss, everybody loses, he's obviously shown with Sabaody and Marineford he can do that as well. With Whole Cake Island and Egghead, I feel like Oda tried something different where he didn't want the Straw Hats to have some sort of huge, happy, conclusive victory at the end of Whole Cake, where it's like, oh, we just straight up beat the Big Mom Pirates, etc., right? And so, because of that, but the arc has to be wrapped up regardless. So, with both Whole Cake and Egghead, I would argue, is a bit more of a triumphant ending than Whole Cake, but both of these storylines where Oda wants the Straw Hats to be up against an overwhelming force, and he wants them to escape, but he doesn't really want them to get the better of the villains. I think in these sort of storylines, he doesn't have a blueprint to work with. And so I feel like with both of these storylines, they're kind of considered, if you remember reading them in real time, they're kind of considered goated like 10 out of 10 storylines until Oda hit this sort of fork in the road where it's like, now we would expect either the Straw Hats to beat the villains normally, or we would expect the Straw Hats to suffer some sort of devastating defeat. These two storylines, Oda doesn't have one of those two options available. Both of these storylines, it's kind of like, Well, they gotta get away, and they're kind of not supposed to beat the big villains of the arc, but it's also not supposed to be a defeat. It's still supposed to overall feel like a victory, just a weirder one, right? And so both of these storylines, you see the same exact criticism from readers, which is like, people say they loved Whole Cake Island all the way till, oh shit, there's like a fly going around. What the hell? Oh, it's like a little moth thing. Okay. People say they love Whole Cake Island until the big mom chase sequence, where it's kind of like, okay, now the arc, a lot of people say the arc feels like it drags, or it's still got Luffy versus Katakuri, but that's like the saving grace of that section. But a lot of people feel like, if you ask them their critique of Whole Cake Island, they will tell you it's like that ending section, right? Egghead Island, same thing. Everybody loved Egghead Island for a long time, but a lot of people feel like the finale, like when it's time to actually wrap things up, it's like, okay, well, the Vegapunk speech kind of dragged, and then it has a very abrupt ending with the hockey knot, right? So it's interesting to me that, like, when Oda attempts to write a different type of arc finale, like kind of go off script, where it's not supposed to be a traditional victory where Luffy beats the bad guy, but it's also not like beats the bad guy and the heroes just beat the bad guys in general, but it's also not supposed to be like an abject failure across the board. I think that's really interesting. Like, this is like a little case study to me that he's not got a tried and true formula of what to do when he wants something in between. Does that make sense? Like, both storylines kind of hit the same sort of issue where, or maybe you love their endings. I don't know. But from a lot of people's perspectives, both storylines had the sort of same sort of issue where it's like Whole Cake ended at a really good point, honestly. Like, a lot of people really liked the ending at the conclusion of the Tea Party, and a lot of people are like, if you go back and read threads, comments, YouTube videos, etc., everybody was like, this is great, now let's go to Wano. But then Oda's kind of like, no, we're gonna have an extended sort of chase sequence where it's like 1 foot in and out the door, where it's kind of like, or like 1 foot in both camps, where it's like, during this section of the arc, what are we supposed to be feeling? Are we supposed to be feeling like triumphant for the Strats? Like, okay, they're fending off the Big Mom pirates over and over. Like, what are we supposed to be feeling here? Because it feels mixed. Like, at points, it's like they're struggling, but then things get fixed, but it kind of like goes in circles a little bit, right? And at the end, it's like, okay, we got away from Big Mom. Luffy beat Katakuri. We got Sanji back. Pedro's dead. All the Jinbei, like, Sanji's family's trapped. The Fishman pirates are stuck there. It felt like a long chase to get out of there, where a lot of stuff happened, but it wasn't like one way or another really conclusive, right? Egghead, I felt like a lot of it's the same thing. It was really exciting when the Gorosei arrived and was like, what's gonna happen here? Like, what's the deal? And it's like, it's not like the Gorosei crushed the Straw Hats, so Oda's not, like, if Oda had wanted to, he could create something very similar to like a Sabaody sort of situation, where it just feels like overwhelming despair, and that's exciting in its own right? But that's not really happening. The Strats are kind of just running and fending them off. And then Oda's not really going the other way, where it's like, okay, well, are the Strats supposed to beat up the Gorosei? And it's like, no, not really. Like, they fight back, but a lot of it's kind of running away. And so it's just this weird middle ground where it's like, what's the narrative feeling supposed to be? Like, what's this section of the arc supposed to feel like? Because when you don't have a sort of direction for where things are supposed to go, or like how you're supposed to be making the readers consistently feel, like, what is the emphasis on? Like, are we beating up the bad guys, like, like at the end of Arlong Park or Alabasta? Or are we getting fucked up like Sabaody? I think it just leaves it kind of like a section that just feels like it drags because it's not really got a clear sort of direction. And then both arcs end kind of abruptly, in a sense, Well, now it's just resolved because of a big hockey knot. Was the hockey knot earned? No. Is it something that checks off the box of the Strats escape? Yes. Does it make me feel triumphant for the Strats? No. Was the scenario very, very tense and like filled with despair before the hockey knot got launched? No. So it's like, it kind of just wraps, right? The hockey knot is cool because it's like, oh, this is Joy Boy's hockey, but it doesn't give you a strong feeling for the end of the arc, right? Like, when the Strats get away at Enies Lobby, yeah, that's an escape, but it's also an outright victory, Like, Luffy, they've defeated all of CP9, they bamboozled all the marine ships, fucked them up with the whirlpools. Aokiji is literally talking like, this was a total defeat for us. He outright says that. This was a total defeat for us. The Strats got away, they spat in the world government's face, got away, and they're like, this was our total victory, right? Like, Enies Lobby feels really triumphant. It's filled with feel-good moments, like the Merry arriving, yada yada. It feels really triumphant. Even though it's an escape, the feel that you're supposed to get at the end of it is very, very clear. Wipe the floor with the bad guys, outsmart them, outmaneuver them, friendship beats all, etc., right? And again, it's like a hockey knot just got us out of there, out of the blue, right? Whole kick, it's like we got out of there, but it was messy, and let's just like move on to the next thing. It's kind of the vibe because they don't feel the happiest about it, but they're also not gonna like cry about it all day that they lost Pedro. So it's like, or even that Jinbei's not there, etc. So there's a long rant, but it's just an observation. I hope I was screen sharing for this. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, long rant, but I hope that makes sense. It's not against either of those arcs because I think those arcs are great. I think that's just what stops those arcs from being a 10 out of 10 for me on both ends, you know? Big Mom parts don't have a single guy they can send in the water wild. Reminder that Law could literally get away by himself in a submarine. That's not true. That's not true. Because that implies that Big Mom's like dumb and she doesn't get like the right people or whatever. Big Mom did the work. Like she literally added to her crew the strongest fisherman pirate crew on the ocean. You know, you can't really fault Big Mom for not being strategic in that sense. Like literally the best fisherman pirate crew in existence was under the umbrella of the Big Mom Pirates, right? It's not her fault that they then betrayed her. You know what I mean? Like that's like yeah, if you get betrayed by the group that is specifically equipped to do everything underwater for you, and it's like, damn, I can't catch them because they went underwater. It's like, yeah, that sucks, but that's like, I don't know. It would be like if Robin betrayed Luffy and left, and then it's like, fuck, now I don't have anyone to read the poneglyphs. And it's like, Luffy, you dumbass, you should have got someone on your crew to read the poneglyphs. It's like, well, I had him, and now the problem is that she left, you know? Like, you know what I mean? That's not really Big Mom's fault. Yeah, doesn't Big Mom have a shark mermaid daughter? Yeah, and her daughter betrayed her. So it's all part of the same concept, right? Like, I don't think Big Mom didn't do her due diligence. She got what she could, right? She had the Sun Pirates underneath her. She had like Jinbei was her subordinate. Jinbei was literally under her crew. Jinbei was her subordinate. The entire Sun Pirates were her subordinates, and she's got a mermaid daughter. She's got everything she needs. It just so happens that the entire faction of the Big Mom Pirates that is equipped to do underwater stuff just so happened to be the same faction that turned against her. You know what I mean? Anyway, continuing on. Avery Sir, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 21 months. Do you think the fact that Imu's true form was shown before Blackbeard's endgame motives are revealed give major stock to Blackbeard being the final villain? I think everything that's happening right now is giving major stock to Blackbeard being the final villain. I sincerely think that the way everything's playing out, Elbaf is the arc where Emu is set to be the main villain, if that makes sense. And then in the next arc, he will be a major antagonist, but secondary to Blackbeard. Again, the simplest comparison I would draw would be to the Big Mom and Kaido situation. All one saga, right? Whole Cake Island precedes Wano. Whole Cake Island, Big Mom is the main villain. She's not defeated there. She continues on to the next arc, right? She's defeated in that arc. That arc's the big war. But now in this arc, she's the secondary. She's still a huge deal, but now she's the secondary villain to be defeated. She goes down before Kaido, you know? Ward, you didn't read my Emu Super? My bad. Hold on. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Tiptia, thanks for two. How many people surpass Emu in strength? End of story. Um, I think some people think that I'm still on the train that Joy Boy was stronger than Emu. So I would say Luffy, Blackbeard, and Joy Boy will be stronger than Emu conclusively. End of story. Luffy, Blackbeard, Joy Boy. But I think that the scope of the One Piece world is expanding so fast in the sense that like now we're not even dealing with for a long time we were really just focused on what's happening in this era, and like lore was stuff that like it's so funny to think about. Lore used to be the stuff that happened in the Roger and Whitebeard era. Like if you go back to pre-time skip, that's what the exciting stuff was. It was like, oh my god, even just hearing about this dude Shiki who was back in that era is exciting, right? Now it feels like that's such a small like our understanding of One Piece lore has expanded so much that we're going back thousands and thousands of years. This is just the third world. Like the world has reset multiple times. And so there's going to be analog characters in the previous world. So it's like, is there going to be, there's probably a Nika user from the first world, right? I wouldn't be surprised if that dude was stronger than Emu. This quote unquote god of war that was supposedly equal to, we don't know if it was to Joy Boy or the first world Nico user, but we know that this god of war is at some point or another equal to a former Nika user. We know that Emu said that they had to use manipulation to take down the giants in the past, use their kids against them. So you can throw that dude in the camp of like people who might actually, like if he's equal to Jorbo or something, maybe the previous user, maybe that previous dude was also equal to or like stronger than Emu. I think so, like conservatively, and then we don't know in the first world who had all of the crazy god fruits and stuff like that, if they existed back then or what the deal was, right? So if I were to say conservatively who I feel confident will be stronger than Emu end of story, I would say Luffy, Blackbeard, Joy Boy. But the way the lore is expanding, it's like it's entirely possible Emu wouldn't be top 5 if you take into account all 3 worlds. Just because, this God of War is now a question mark, right? First world Nika user, now a question mark. Other God Fruit users from previous worlds or whatever. I know it sounds insane right now, but there was a time if you said that like Roger wouldn't be top 10 at the end of the story, people would have called you crazy. So it's just the lore is expanding very fast, Um, Kanal Dashingwall. Thanks a lot. Hey Morge, I think it's time we address what the fuck is Oda doing with Zoro. No character arc, no story importance. What is Oda even doing with him? I mean, call me crazy, but I think that I think that how do I say this? I think that that I'm holding out for the end of this arc because to me this arc has really emphasized the wings of the king. It's really really emphasized that. And Zoro's been given a clear setup, right? Gaban straight up outright told him that you are not, as you are right now, good enough to be the wing of the Pirate King. You need to get your Conqueror's Haki down, right? So to me, that's good signs. Like the moment a character has a clear setup that's elaborated on, explicitly put forward like that, that's a good sign that the character is going to get something. So it's the same way I'm not like, oh no, Sanji hasn't gotten this or that. It's like, well, let's let the arc play out because I think the way that Oda's framed it, it's more likely than not, from my perspective, maybe being overly optimistic, more likely than not that Zoro is about to get some significant focus along with Sanji. I think big power up in store for him, and hopefully it comes with some character growth. That's the one thing that's really missing with Zoro, in my opinion. Post, post time skip, just character growth. That's what I'm looking for. But I wouldn't freak out. Like to me, if you just look back at what Oda set up for Zoro in Elbaf itself, I think it's a good sign. Let's get Streamlights up to 50 real quick, because we're literally almost there. We're almost there. Also, what chapter does Luffy lose to Magellan? I feel like it's 530 something. Zoro's Conqueror's Haki power up will just be for hype and no character moments attached, lol. I really hope that's not the case. Really hope that's not the case, but it could be. It could be that. I think Sanji's will have character stuff attached, I feel pretty confident about that. Oda's been good with writing. Oda's just been on it with writing Sanji's stuff lately in the post time skip for sure. He's been good with the character, consistent with the character. And I think one of the cool things, this is almost rare. I think one of the big things that maybe doesn't get talked enough about with Sanji post time skip. I mean, I'm sure it's talked about, but like it's a continuing through line. Like Oda hasn't dropped it. It's hard to explain, but even like looking at pre-time skip, when Oda would write, like let's say Oda's writing an arc like Skypiea. Skypiea is a Nami centric arc. Skypiea is a really really good arc where Nami gets some character development, and a lot of it is her learning to lean into like because she's got the navigation skills, but Nami's one weakness is that she thinks too small and too grounded. You know, in a literal and symbolic sense. And she can't be the type of navigator that Luffy needs, who can get him anywhere that he needs to go, if she doesn't expand her way of thinking and become a bit more romantic in how she thinks, a bit more open to dreaming, right? So that's a big through line for her from Jaya through Skypiea. And Oda does that very well for Nami in that arc. But that's pretty much it. Like, that's not like a sort of continuing sort of storyline that Nami needs to tackle in varying steps over the course of the pre-time skip, right? With Sanji, everything that's introduced in Whole Cake Island, I think I really appreciate the fact that it's what do you call it? Progressive in the sense that it doesn't just stop there, you know? Everything that happens in Whole Cake Island plays directly into what's happening with him character wise in Wano, right? And it doesn't stop there either because I thought that that's pretty good writing right there. Now Gaban is bringing that stuff back around, and he's like, the same stuff that you struggled with since childhood that's brought up in Whole Cake Island and that's kind of defined you in many ways, that is part of the reason that you're not yet a Conqueror's Haki user, right? So now that's going to continue building into the Elbaf storyline. So honestly, like really good. It Oda's not been writing any of the Straw Hats like this post time skip, if that makes sense. I think the closest, like Sanji's writing is really really good here, and it even pre time skip, Oda wasn't giving a Straw Hat regular sort of progressive focus like this. Where it's every arc you're seeing an increase. I think Usopp, you could argue pre-time skip was like that. I would argue Usopp because you can kind of see the progression. Like Usopp's always progressing pre-time skip, so I think that's maybe a counterpoint there. Outside of Usopp, I can't think of anyone, and I think with Usopp, a lot of it is revisiting the same sort of things. Whereas with Sanji, I think it's more clear, like you dealt with this in Whole Cake Island, and then you dealt with this as an extension of that in Wano, and now the final stage of that, final whatever, but the next natural stage of that is what you're dealing with in Elbaf. I think I like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah. How do we get on this? Why are we talking about this? Hold on. I'm almost done with the images. Almost done with the images. Sanji's development is iterative. Yeah, it's good. Why are people talking about Oda running a country? Brook and Robin, maybe that's kind of stretch. I mean, Brook is the least focused on Straw Hat of all Straw Hats. At least historically he was until now. But generally speaking, Brook gets pretty much no character progression in. He's not gotten any character progression in any arc in One Piece, period. That's just not the type of character he. But I think a lot of that's because he's already lived a full life, you know? Yeah, Robin coming to terms with wanting to help the crew is kind of hidden its own. Yeah, exactly. That's why I said Robin's the only other example I can kind of think of in post time skip, because she had a brief moment in Zoe, and then that plays into Wano, but it's not focused like Sanji. Like Sanji, it's like he's a big central part of, like his focus is obviously a huge part of Whole Cake Island. It was a big central focus in the Wano storyline climax as well, and it's clearly a big part of Elbaf as well, you know? Brook doesn't need it, to be honest. He's here for the vibes. Yeah, this is not a critique of Brook's character, because I've just come to appreciate Brook more and more, especially after his backstory, because he's a character who really has already lived the full life. Like, he's a grown ass 90-year-old man. He just has so much more perspective than the rest of the crew. It's the same way I'm not really looking at Jinbei as a character that I feel like needs to develop, you know? Um they're just at very different stages in terms of their character growth. Um oh, Caesar. What chapter Luffy versus Caesar round 1? 681? Is that right? That doesn't seem right. Steve's Emporium, thanks for the 10. The way it expanded the lore made parts of the story fall flat for me. When Luffy tells Emu he'll be king of the pirates, it carries less emotional weight. That title feels so small in the current scope. I think Wano's the arc that really blew everything open. Not in a bad way, like critiquing Wano, because it's like, it remains to be seen if like our new sort of like much grander sort of direction that the story's headed is, is it going to feel better, more satisfying than when we felt it was, not about like, 3,000 years of like cycles of gods and stuff and devils and stuff like that, That's to be seen. But I do agree, like, the last time that I felt real impact from the idea of like, I think the title of like, I'm gonna be king of the pirates and stuff like that, I remember it felt like it carried a lot more weight. Like, we're ending um I think the last time it felt really, really impactful for me personally was I guess I would say when he says it to Kaido, I think Act 1 he says it to Kaido. Um yeah, Act 1 he says it to Kaido. He also, I think he gets to the rooftop, says it to Kaido and Big Mom. It's just saying I'm going to be king of the pirates feels very small in comparison, at least to me now. I agree. Saying I'm going to be king of the pirates to Emu might as well be, because before King of the Pirates has weight behind it, it's just like I'm claiming that I'm going to be the grandest thing that exists in the One Piece world. Like a title that's so mythic that towards the beginning of the series it was just like it would be absolute madness to even sort of approach this. But now it's kind of like, to someone like Emu, the title King of the Pirates, and in general to the bigger name stuff that's gonna come along, King of the Pirates basically means this, like, the difference between being King of the Pirates versus being a Yonko to Emu is like the difference between like an ant and a beetle or something like that, Um, like, I put it this way, maybe I'm wrong, but it remains to be seen. But I just don't think Emu has any sort of like, I don't know if Emu even like views Roger as anything noteworthy, Um, like I don't think Emu views Roger as I just don't know if he even like thinks about Roger, if that makes sense. I think he thinks about the One Piece, because it seems to be important to the general story, but yeah, I guess King of the Pirates used to mean like I'm gonna be the next Roger or something like that. Whereas now it's just like, to these characters, Roger's, yeah, I don't know. Being the king of the pirates is being the freest man on the sea. Saying that in the face of Emu is hard. I agree if we add the additional context into what like, but to be fair, it's people like Luffy and Roger that define it as being the freest man of the seas. Like they're the only ones who ever said that. So it's people who get that title. Like that just seems to be the trend between Luffy and Roger. I just don't think Emu. It doesn't. Emu's king of the world, right? So I just don't think, all I'm saying is like before every person Luffy would say I'm going to be king of the pirates to, it was saying like, it was essentially saying I'm going to surpass you. I'm going to be bigger than you one day, right? Like when Luffy says to Crocodile, I'm going to be king of the pirates, it's basically saying like, one day I'm going to be bigger than you. Like I'm the man who's like, you're small fry because I'm going to be bigger than you one day. And Crocodile knows that, right? Same if he says it to whoever the fuck. Lucci, uh, Gecko Moria, Doflamingo, etc., right? It's saying like, I'm going to be bigger than you. Same with Kaido, like telling an emperor of the seas. That's so cool. Telling an emperor of the seas, like, I'm gonna go past you. I'm gonna become the thing that you're not. I'm gonna be king of the pirates, right? Telling it to Emu, it's just like, I just don't think Emu puts any. It doesn't mean anything. Telling it to Emu, right? I guess the equivalent would be like if Luffy told Kaido, "I'm gonna be a Yonko first mate." Like, it's not exactly the same. Like, I know King of the Pirates carries the meaning of freest man on the seas to Luffy, but I don't think it means that to Emu. I don't think Emu ever thought of Roger or Rocks or something, or them as like people that Emu couldn't just like squash if he felt like it. You know what I mean? Maddie Sun 300, thanks for the 10. World's Strongest Swordsman is irrelevant. The story is heavily tied to hockey and devil fruits. From a story and narrative standpoint, it becomes irrelevant what you're holding in your hand when you fight. Um, I just disagree because you said it's tied to hockey and devil fruits, but World's Strongest, like, swordsmen fight with hockey, They fight with hockey, so that is still relevant. And hockey is like the key component of swordsmanship at the top level, whether we like it or not. Um, you can say it becomes irrelevant what you're holding in your hand when you fight, but you can make that argument. But then it's like, if you kind of list out all the strongest hockey users in One Piece, a lot of them they happen to find it very relevant to be holding a sword in their hand. Case in point, the dude that we're talking about at this very moment, Emu, right? Like, I think you can't call it irrelevant when Oda's, if anything, very consistently, repeatedly established that I'd say the majority of the strongest hockey users in One Piece are swordsmen or sword users, whatever you want to put. They use a sword, okay, right? So like, and we know that hockey is how they use the sword as part of their How do I say this in a way that doesn't piss anybody off, right? They all fight with hockey with their swords, right? So like the swords aren't irrelevant in the story, right? You know what I mean? Like, if we just go down the list, if you wanted to list the strongest hockey users, I don't know if we can even confidently say that Joy Boy didn't use a sword, because we've seen in depictions Nika wielding a sword, right? But let's put Joy Boy aside, right? Maybe Joy Boy fights exactly like Luffy, we don't know, right? But from characters we've seen, Emu uses swords. He uses a shit ton of swords. He loves swords. He's just like a fucking Tashigi level sword nerd, right? The dude fucking loves swords. Emu uses swords. Rocks, Harold, Roger, Big Mom, Shanks, Mihawk. I think if you stacked up all the characters that you think are the strongest hockey users in One Piece, I think more of them would use swords than not, right? If you want to get into the nitty gritty of like, are they a swordsman or not, that's like, then we can open that debate. But I think just say that using a sword is irrelevant. It's like, well, if it's so irrelevant, then why do Rocks, Harold, Emu, Shanks, etc., like, why do they all find it so important to use it, Why aren't they just going fisticuffs? Julian Reed, thanks for the 2. Wasn't Roger part of his little flashback before descending? Yeah, but that doesn't mean that Emu thinks that Roger's above him, right? That's my point, which is that in the past, when Luffy states his goal, I'm to be Pirate King, it's telling the person that is in front of him, like, I'm going past you, right? Like, I don't care about you or anything you're going to be. Like, he's announcing a goal so big to the person in front of him that it's basically telling the person that I'm going to be bigger than you, right? Don Krieg knows when Luffy's telling him I'm going to be king of the pirates that that's bigger than me. Like, Crocodile, when he hears Luffy say I'm going to be king of the pirates, it pisses him off because it's like, you can't even beat me. You think you're going to be king of the pirates, right? Kaido, it's like, I'm the fucking, like, Emperor of the Sea. You're just like a little kid. You think you're going to surpass me and become king of the pirates, right? Every character Luffy says that to, in instances where it carries weight, it tends to be basically like somebody shocked that they think that Luffy can reach that sort of status that even they themselves view as above them. Emu views them all as like just small fry. He even says that in his initial speech to Cobra. It's like, Yeah, there have been some D tribe characters that have showed up, but like, no, not really a big deal, any of them or whatever, right? I don't think Emu would like telling Emu I'm gonna be king of the pirates. Again, it should mean as much to Emu as saying like I'm gonna be the fucking fleet admiral of the Marines. Like, fucking cool, dude. I'm God. You know what I mean? Like, what's a king to a god, right? I'm not saying Luffy should stop saying that. I'm just saying that it now fundamentally no longer like this is the first time Luffy said I'm gonna be king of the pirates to somebody who it just doesn't mean jack shit to, in a sense, right? Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe we get some emu flashback to Joy Boy after this, and it's like, oh damn. I also will say this. I think that's a big part of why Oda has expanded Luffy's dream, right? So I don't think it's coincidence that at the same time, like Wano was the arc that blew things open and kind of made a much bigger. It's like, okay, Roger's not the biggest deal. What really matters is the stuff that happened before the Void Century with Joy Boy and stuff like that, right? Like there's bigger, more meaning to everything. Dawn of the World, yada yada. I think it's interesting that after that arc, like immediately, just follow the sequence of events, right? Up till Wano, the biggest thing that you could be is King of the Pirates. Like King of the Pirates, that's the end all be all. Roger was the end all be all, right? Whitebeard was such a big deal because he was the only character who was basically comparable to Roger, right? On that same sort of plane, right? But Roger was the end all be all. He was Pirate Jesus. He was everything, right? We didn't really look back into, like, Oda didn't actually give us much insight into stuff before. We'd heard the name Joy Boy, but we didn't know what that meant, right? We just knew Joy Boy was some dude from the Void Century prior to, right? Wano changed all of that in that now Luffy being the successor to Roger doesn't matter. What matters is Luffy being the successor to Joy Boy, right? For Luffy, for his personal journey, Roger's still his goal. But in the broader context that everybody's painting, Joy Boy, Dawn of the World, and now we're even learning in Elbaf, it goes beyond Joy Boy. It goes to like thousands and thousands of years ago, right? First world shit. Anyway, Wano is the arc that changed our perspective of the lore. Immediately after that arc, he establishes that Luffy does in fact have a very different dream, right? We kind of gotten a hint about that before during the Ace Sabo flashback, but most people were just like, if you recall, like the long-standing belief was just like Luffy probably just said that he wants to be king of the pirates. Nobody really believed that Luffy had said some different sort of dream at that point in time. But right after Wano ends, Luffy explains that he's got something bigger in mind than just being king of the pirates. I think that's very important because it flows with kind of the progression of things. Where now, yeah, Luffy still wants to be king of the pirates, but frankly, it now carries a similar sort of weight to Naruto saying he wants to be the Hokage. In the sense that at one point in time in the story, that did feel like the end all be all. But by the time we're at the final war, it's like being Hokage, it feels like small potatoes compared to the big picture, right? Like, you know, Ashra, Indra, shit, like the fucking, you know, like all the stuff, the world tree, yada yada, right? Cycle of fate, blah 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 blah. I'm not saying Pirate King's ever gonna feel like that, but I think there's a reason that Oda started expanding Luffy's true goal beyond Pirate King. At the same point in the story that Pirate King stopped being the most meaningful sort of title or like goal or status that one could achieve, if that makes sense. The Pure Trevisa says Luffy's trying to say when I'm finished, I'll make Pirate King more important than just a mere king of the world. Sure, that can be what Luffy's saying, but I'm pointing out that fundamentally the weight behind it has changed because before it was sort of a blanket, like clear cut sort of like, look, you might be a fucking Shichibukai, but I'm gonna be king of the pirates. And to both people and everybody who might be listening or whatever, it intrinsically carries the weight of bigger, right? I'm going to be what do you call? I'm going to be bigger than you. You are going to be small fry to me, right? Now we've reached a point in the story where it's like that can be what Luffy personally means because Luffy thinks of King of the Pirates as like the best thing you can be, but it's no longer really gonna be. It's no longer really gonna have weight to somebody like Emu, you know? Because it's like for Emu, King of the Pirates is just again, it wouldn't. I imagine it wouldn't feel that different than being like, I want to be Fleet Admiral of the Marines. It's like cute, you know? Honestly, if Oda changed Luffy's dream to "I'll be the strongest," it would age better, but people would find it boring. It would be more generic. It would be more generic for sure. I'm very interested in the new dream that Luffy's gonna express. Okay, hold on. Kunal Dushing Wall, thanks a lot. Zoro's gonna open a dictionary, come up with the longest tactic possible, say, I got it now, defeating Sobbers. Oda lost the recipe with Zoro. I do really question what the hell Oda's plan became with Zoro. Because it just used to be. The writing for Zoro pre time skip was so good. It's not like he got focused on arcs necessarily, but if you just look at like it's just so consistent. It's just like there's good character writing for him every single, not every single arc, but it's very frequent, right? Like if you look at Zoro's pre-time skip storyline, right? First, it's just like it's the establishing origin story stuff in Shellstown, right? The standard Straw Hat stuff. We get his character conflict. He has the little mini arc of basically shifting from being like I'll never be a pirate to like, you know what, I don't care what my name is known as long as I can achieve my dream and as long as I don't have regrets about how I act or whatever, I'm okay with being a pirate, right? So he gets a little arc there. Then Baratier, phenomenal character writing. Like, yes, it's Sanji's arc, but I think you'd be hard pressed. Like most people would say that the ultimate highlight of Baratier, the most iconic stuff, is actually from Zoro of all people, right? Um, that's Zoro's moment where he's humbled, where he has to reassess and basically realize what it actually takes to achieve his dream. He is born again essentially in Baratier, right? And then you see this consistently, like from Baratier onwards. Oda is able to focus on Zoro frequently with just like getting in his head about how Zoro starts to view himself and the standards that he's setting himself. He's kind of seen the top. And so now for the rest of pre-time skip, Oda's able to regularly revisit Zoro's inner monologues sort of in the context of fights and just be like, and examine how Zoro is thinking of himself in terms of his path to the top, right? So like in Arlong Park, he doesn't want to lose, like he's in no shape to fight. He's near death because of the injuries to Mihawk, but he's now changed how he views himself. He's like, I can't allow myself to succumb to these injuries that an ordinary man would fall to because I need to be extraordinary to challenge someone like Mihawk, right? So you see Zoro's new born again mindset, and then you see him again have these sort of self examinations as he's fighting Mr. One, right? He's trying to figure out like what am I lacking here as a swordsman? Where do I need to grow, right? So he's struggling with this sort of thing. Even in minor arcs like Skypiea, you see him working with things that aren't deep character stuff, but like how do I use long range attacks, right? And then obviously you see him grow a lot between Water 7 through Thriller Bark. I would say that's like Zoro's little like first mate, vice captain sort of storyline, wherein like Water 7, Zoro finally starts taking some actual responsibility. Like he starts pushing himself, for better word, people want to acknowledge or not acknowledge, into that role of the guy that basically holds Luffy accountable as a vice captain. And then Thriller Bark shows us the flip side where it's like, but he does this because he has slowly over time realized that the crew and Luffy's journey and Luffy's ambition as a captain is something that Zoro now puts above even his own life and his own journey, right? Not in sense like I want this rather than this, but rather that like I need to do this if I am the type of man who's actually going to be able to achieve my dream, right? So you see like how things have changed so far between Zoro when he first tells Luffy like, "Hey, if you ever get in the way of my dream, I'll have you commit seppuku or I'll cut your stomach open," all the way to Zoro at Thriller Bark now basically being like, "My captain's dream, I hold on like the ultimate pedestal." Like it's a beautiful transition for Zoro there, right? And then finally, we get that last piece of development with him actually bowing down to Mihawk, the man that he would never have bowed down to before, in order to get the training that he needs to surpass Mihawk and therefore be the pillar that Luffy needs, right? So Zoro actually has like a lot of regular focus throughout pre-time skip, and most of it is around these 2 points, which is one, in pursuit of his dream, right? Like how he's re-evaluating like how he needs to approach things and how he needs to push himself in order to achieve his dream. But then at the same time, his own journey into becoming not just this sort of like lone wolf on a journey to achieving his dream, but rather the like this pillar for his captain and starting to put Luffy's dream in the same light or even above his own, right? So those are the two sort of running character storylines for Zoro, and most arcs are either like focusing on one aspect or the other as we go, most major arcs. And so Oda's never forgetting how to write Zoro over the course of that storyline. I think where things fucked up post time skip, now that I'm really thinking about it, I think the thing that fucked Zoro up, I think the thing that fucked Zoro up is training with Mihawk. Not that it was bad writing for that to happen or anything, but like before pre-time skip, Zoro always had this sort of like so many of the scenes where Zoro's pushing himself, he's thinking about Mihawk. Like, how do I become the type of man that can defeat Mihawk, right? Now he spent a couple years training with Mihawk. Zoro, when he comes out of post-time skip, is very confident, very self-assured. He is very familiar with what the top level of the world looks like, right? And he doesn't seem to be all that concerned anymore about like, how do I push myself to reach it? I think he just seems very confident that he's going to get there, right? So that's one aspect of it. And then the second aspect is he already kind of closed out that character arc that he had pre-time skip about like slowly shifting from a me mentality to my captain first sort of mentality. So that's already happened. So then post-time skip, we don't really get that much more for Zoro to work with in that category. Yeah, I think those are the things that are like, now that I'm really thinking about it, I think that that's like a lot of what's kind of happened with Zoro, which is that the two things that Oda would regularly go back to sort of write his his deeper bits of writing around, he can't go back to as effectively now. You know, even with the King fight, it was like Oda had to almost invent a conflict for Zoro, like a character conflict for Zoro, because he didn't have one. It was just like, oh, to become a stronger swordsman, I need to learn to like stop holding back. That's like, it's a reductive view of the King fight, but you could argue that at its core, that's basically what it was. And it's like, okay, yeah. Zoro's never had a fucking problem holding back. If anything, he goes all out too much, you know. Anyway, I love how the live action leaned into it with the Mihawk PTSD hallucinations. 100%, 100%. All right, continuing on. Mitchum28, thanks for the 5. Who else even wants to be king of the pirates at this point? Plus, Emu paid more attention to rocks than ever Roger. Yeah, that's the other thing, which is like the one person that Emu seems to have actually acknowledged and taken interest in wasn't even king of the pirates. You know, you could argue he was king of the pirates without the official title, but it just doesn't like. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it has the same weight anymore. As for who wants to be king of the pirates, I think like there's characters that want the One Piece, right? So there's still plenty of characters like that. The only person who regularly reiterates that he specifically wants to be the Pirate King is Luffy, which makes it a little bit different than before. Before it was like everybody, like Big Mom, Kaido, all the big shots wanted to be King of the Pirates. Fucking Doflamingo, like Luffy's last several villains. I think that's really interesting. The same thing about this. So if you look at Luffy's villains throughout the post time skip, like and pre time skip, a lot of Luffy's villains pre-time skip between fucking East Blue captains, Crocodile, Moria, right? And then post-time skip, Doflamingo, Big Mom, Kaido. All of them, their main goal is becoming king of the pirates, right? Like they reiterate that a lot. At the exact same point in the story where Gold Roger stops being the most important character that Luffy's kind of succeeding, and it instead becomes like very grand, and now it's about like millennia of storytelling, of events and like various figures and like Joy Boy and gods, etc. The moment it suddenly expands way out of Roger, that's kind of the moment that Oda stops having other villains, like the other major players that Luffy's going to be up against, be interested in King of the Pirates anymore, right? I think Blackbeard is a character that you could argue wants to be king of the pirates, but Blackbeard has never really said he wants to be king of the pirates that I can recall. He does want the One Piece, but he wants to be more like Roger, like Rocks, right? He wants to be he says he wants to be my era. He wants to be a king of the world. I don't think Blackbeard, maybe I'm wrong. Has Blackbeard ever said he wants to be king of the pirates? Even Buggy. Buggy wants the One Piece, and Buggy's kind of not a real villain in that sense. Why should Emu care about a title that was made by the newspapers, LMAO? Yeah, exactly. Um, Mad Sun 300, thanks to 5. Talking about from a title standpoint, wouldn't call Big Mom a swordsman because supernatural abilities are so intertwined, so it's just lackluster. But it's more like if you remove, like if you just look at what she's doing just in terms of physical combat, right? So I don't want to get into the definitions, right? Like it, I don't want to get into the definitions, right? At the very least, we can acknowledge that there's a lot of strong characters who, in terms of their hockey combat, prefer to fight with swords, right? And Big Mom's one of them, right? So the swords are relevant, right? To Pierre Treviso, thanks for the 2. After Luffy stated Pirate King stuff, Emu flashback to Joy Boy. But it could also just be because Luffy fucking looks similar, right? Maybe we get more context about and speak similarly, right? We could get more context about the Emu Joy Boy relationship, and maybe Joy Boy said some shit like "I want to be king of the pirates," but at the same time, like I don't think there's any indication that Emu really cares about the title King of the Pirates, because Joy Boy was the first pirate from what we recall, right? Maybe he called himself King of the Pirates back then. Shit, I'm supposed to be snipping images. What am I doing here? Caesar. I think Luffy loses the Doflamingo around chapter 744. Grizzly Adam 8277, thanks for the 5. Expanding his loyalty to Luffy's dream to the rest of the crew as well while developing as a leader would have been the natural progression, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of routes that. I mean, I think leadership would have been the simplest route for Oda to expand things because, and it kind of seemed that way with Wano. Like, a lot of people felt like that, you know? That was the direction that Oda would be about to go with Zoro and Wano. Because Zoro's been a good vice captain, but that hasn't been the same thing as what do you call Zoro actually having to like lead the samurai or whatever, like some people thought at one point, you know. And that would have been a great setup for Zoro's Conqueror's Haki potentially, but you know, that's just not his thing, I guess. That's not what Oda wanted for him. All right, almost done with images. Sorry, started going slow with them because it got caught up in all the other stuff. 923 is when Luffy loses to Kaido. Hold on. We're almost caught up. What the hell? What the hell? Okay, here we go. Luffy losing to Kaido is still one of my favorites the first time around. Just yeah. I think I like when Oda's able to come up with things that are new, if that makes sense. So like we hadn't seen Luffy really get one-shotted before, you know? Like just straight up, like truly one-shotted. I don't think that had happened. And Luffy fought some really strong characters up to that point. Henchme987, thanks for the 2. We need a dedicated Roger point of view flashback. So sometimes I still wonder if we're gonna get that. Cause I feel like it's tricky because you could argue that the Odin flashback ultimately became the Roger flashback. Because the moment that everyone really remembers from that is, of course, Roger laughed, right? Like that. And I think to date, that is easily Roger's most iconic moment in the series, right? Um, I think that was Roger at his peak, I guess you could say, in terms of like being beloved as a character. I actually had some thoughts recently on why I feel like the God Valley flashback didn't. I mean, Roger's like it didn't fuck up people's perception of Roger necessarily, but it lowered him in terms of like popularity and standing compared to the rest of the old generation in a way that was surprising to a lot of people, right? Um, and I've had some thoughts after thinking about like why that is. I will probably do a video on it at some point. I think my only question is like, was it intentional by Oda to kind of like take away from Roger's mythos somewhat, or was Oda not aware that this is what he was doing with the character? All right, we're on the last one. So Emu stabbing Luffy. All right. All right. There we go. All right. All right. All right. All right. Let me put this into the tier maker thing. Finally getting started. The hell? All right. I know this took a while, but don't worry. There's not that many Luffy losses to get through. So this won't be the hardest tier list ever. Also, let's get Streamlux up to 100 real quick, because we're starting the tier list. All right, all right, all right. I think Roger would have been fine if he didn't goon or Shaki in such a Sanji manner. No, I've thought about it a lot. I don't think that that's even the part of it. I think what's interesting is just that straight up. Hold on one second. Oh, was I not sharing this whole time? I thought I was sharing. Okay, hold on. My bad. Hold on, hold on. I need to be better at that. So what I think is interesting with the whole Roger situation is the simplest way I can put it is that the God Valley flashback basically established Roger as the least interesting of all the old generation characters. Okay? That's the simplest way I can put it. I'm going to save my further thoughts for a future video. But I think what ultimately happened with the God Valley flashback is that was the first time that we really got to sit and experience stuff with Roger, like as a character over an extended period of time. Like the whole flashback was like 20 chapters or something like that, right? Obviously, he wasn't in every chapter, but he was like one of the main characters throughout that whole flashback, right? He ultimately comes across as generic. That's the biggest thing with Roger. He ultimately comes across as generic. Um, and it's interesting because like beforehand we kept like it was almost like from a distance Roger was so much more interesting because we would only see he was so mythologized and we'd only see little glimpses of him in silhouettes or maybe little iconic quotes and stuff like that. So it really made you want to meet the man behind this because like in bits and pieces he just seemed like such a legend. But then when we finally get this really extended storyline that delves into all of the old generation, Roger's not even the most interesting character on his crew. And I'm not even talking about Shanks. Like straight up in the whole God Valley flashback, fucking in the entire God Valley flashback, right? There are so many characters that are fundamentally far more interesting and have far more compelling philosophies, um, worldviews, character journeys, etc. than Roger. He's written as very shallow and simple, basically, right? And you can be like, well, like even Rayleigh over the course of the God Valley flashback, even he has like an actually interesting little character storyline that plays out there. It's not deep or anything, but it's something that deepens Rayleigh in a sense and makes me understand him better. You could say Luffy's shallow, but Luffy's deceptively shallow, right? Like he seems shallow on the surface, but when you dig a little deeper, like you get into a lot of these storylines, you get so much more out of him. I'm not gonna say anything further than that, but yeah, I'm not gonna say anything further than that. Was Kaido more interesting than Roger in God Valley? Funnily enough, I think you could even argue with Kaido, who was like a very minor character in that whole thing. Like, I legitimately came away from the God Valley flashback liking Kaido and Big Mom more as characters than I did previously in Wano and Whole Cake Island, because we saw this whole other side. Like, we'd previously only seen Kaido as this brutal warlord figure or whatever, but actually seeing him as this kid apprentice on the Rocks Pirates, and seeing him like kind of learning from Whitebeard, learning from the others, seeing where he got his his start as like a cocky young whippersnapper or whatever, seeing where the beef with him and Big Mom began. It all of it humanized the character in a way that was interesting. It makes you reread Wano with a different perspective, you know? Kaido's still a really bad guy in Wano, but it almost makes it so much more interesting that it's like he's enjoyable. He's funny in the God Valley flashback. He's a character that I'm kind of rooting for in the God Valley flashback. It's like, good for you, Kaido. Like, you're sitting up there with at the big boys table when he lines up with them in dragon form, ready to take on Emu and everything like that. It almost makes him endearing. And so then when you read the Wano arc in retrospect, it's like, damn, like Kaido and Big Mom, it's just so, it's almost tragic thinking about how things started versus how they ended up, afterwards. I would argue that literally the God Valley flashback deepened our character understanding of every single old generation figure. With Roger, it basically kind of like pulled back a veneer of like deeper philosophy or whatever, and kind of revealed that underneath it's a very shallow and simple person. Basically, there's not anything of substance there. I think that's the subconscious feeling that kind of comes with the whole perception of Roger post the God Valley flashback. I did tear up at Big Mom and Kaido's confusion when Orox was attacking them. I mean, I didn't feel that deeply or whatever about that specific thing, but it's fundamentally interesting. I don't think Oda did a single thing interesting with Roger's character, which is a shame because he's the character that readers are probably the most interested in for a large, large, large portion of the story. You know. 1 second before we get into it. I'm afraid I talked too much about it here already. This is why I should save my thoughts for videos, because I can just explain it in a much more, uh, in a much more comprehensive manner. But it is what it is. Tornado says maybe Oda views young Roger different from old Roger, and that's totally fine. That's 100% fine. But it did him it in terms of like reader perception, it did Roger no favors, if that makes sense. It would almost be like, it would be cool to see what made young Roger become more like old Roger, because it feels like there's a huge gap. You could argue that the events of God Valley transformed him and his way of thinking, but we never really see or feel that. Like, you can see by the end of God Valley how every single one of the old gen, like Garp, fucking Dragon, if you count him as old gen or whatever, Kaido, Big Mom, how their mentality fundamentally changes, Whitebeard, etc. You can see what happens. With Roger, Oda delves very little into Roger's like post God Valley debrief thoughts. Pretty much not at all. So you could kind of headcanon some stuff, like maybe Roger grew a brain after this, but it's kind of headcanon. And young Roger's almost 40, lol. Yeah, it reminds me of the Sopranos quotes, like 37, just a kid. Okay, anyway, let's get into this. I'm gonna put the Crocodile loss in S tier. I think that's fair to say, right? Phenomenal, like Luffy's first big loss. It's memorable enough that like people are even pointing to the Emu loss as like a direct callback, right? Let me kind of put these in order. Let me just order these a little bit. They got disordered after for whatever reason. Hold on. Here. Smoker loss. Smoker loss. Hold on. That should have come first. Okay, Doflamingo, Kaido. Kaido fucks him up a lot. It's crazy to see it all in one row. It's actually hilarious. Smoker. Roger not even acknowledging the genocide around him was also weird to me. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it just he's written in as shallow a manner as possible, and it's particularly jarring next to all the other characters who were like I read God Valley, I'm like I understand Dragon so much better. He's such a deeper character than initially. I read God Valley, The Rock's flashback. I'm like I understand Whitebeard so much better. He's a deeper character. Kaido, Big Mom, Garp, like all of these characters. Obviously, Rocks and Harold, like fucking Shaki, fucking Rayleigh, like characters that you wouldn't expect to gain depth through God Valley. Fucking Blackbeard, and Blackbeard's like fucking 1 years old, you know? And then Roger, it's like, do something, do something. Not just fight. That's cool, but like give me something, you know? Like you got this big dream of yours that you share with Luffy, right? Like what planted that in your head, right? You've inspired so many characters like Shanks, right? Like what's so influential about you? Like what's so inspirational? Um anyway, that's just my thoughts. Maybe there's another flashback that Oda's got waiting for us or whatever, but I don't know. And it's funny because it's reflected in popularity polls too. That like Roger's popularity actually plummeted in the global popularity polls after the God Valley flashback. So to me, if you're getting like a whole flashback that gives you a ton more screen time and it actually lowers your popularity, something's off there, right? So the smoker loss, I think there's two ways to view it. I think in hindsight, it feels like a very negligible, like it feels like an insignificant loss. But at the time, it was kind of important because it was two firsts, if that makes sense. It was the first time that Luffy had a loss, of course, and like the first time that it was the first time that Oda had made Luffy look and feel small in East Blue. Like all of East Blue, everyone had been shocked at how strong Luffy is. Every character Luffy went up against. Smoker's the first character that was like 30 million, you're so weak. And it's like, the dude just beat Arlong. Like, he just beat all the strongest characters in East Blue. Like, what are you talking about, right? Um, so I think there was that. And then the second first was that it was the first Logia. And man, people do not remember this now because, you know, we're so far in the story, but Logias were a fucking nightmare pre-time skip. Logias, how to explain? Logias were such a big deal in One Piece early on that it extended outside of the One Piece verse. In like back in the old days, anytime people were arguing like One Piece characters versus other universe characters, Logias were the ace in the hole. They're essentially the equivalent of like, you know, how does this character beat Gojo's Infinity, right? Imagine that argument, but back then, and it was for all One Piece Logias. It was just like, well, you know, you could just drop three admirals. Like people would argue, you could drop in three admirals and they would solo the Naruto verse. I don't think that that's correct or accurate or anything like that, but those were discussions that were had. It was like, how do people beat Eno, right? Like, I mean, obviously there's actual elemental counters, but some of the Logia hadn't been shown elemental counters, like fucking Kizaru, right? So Logia became this long-standing problem in One Piece and just this iconic sort of ability in the sense that it's just blatantly unfair, right? I think in most storytelling like intangibility just feels like a very unfair ability, even more so than like regeneration and stuff. So seeing Luffy hit Smoker a bunch and just the punches go straight through him, it felt like a very unique problem that we hadn't faced before in the sense that it was like it's not even like Luffy's not strong enough. It's like what the fuck is he even supposed to do? It feels like a very hopeless sort of opponent to fight against, right? So I think at the time the Smoker defeat was pretty interesting. I would like at the moment it just feels so minor because Luffy didn't really get fucked up badly or anything like that. But at the time it just posed a very interesting situation. I would put it in A. You know, I would put it in A. Steve's Emporium with a good point. I think a lot of the pushback misses the concept of timing. Even if we get a flashback of Roger being really cool, it missed the timing slash moment. The story's kind of moved past Roger's level. Yeah, I don't know. Henchme says Sea Prism Stone was always around though. Only Wiper and Smoker have half a brain. Yeah, but Sea Stone has always kind of in One Piece been viewed as like circumventing the argument. You know what I mean? Like it's not the way Sea Prism Stone is like nobody ever talks about like why doesn't Luffy just like hide Sea Stone in his pockets and then go fight Kaido or something like that, you know? Because it's kind of just not really it's viewed as basically like cheating the fight, if that makes sense. For whatever reason, people are more cool with the concept of like Luffy using water like on his fists to be able to punch Crocodile than just like, you know, a sea stone glove or something like that. So yeah, you're technically right that sea prism stone is always a thing. Like it was literally introduced with Smoker. But generally speaking, like pre-time skip, if you just go back and look at all the discussions that people are having on like forums and YouTube and stuff like that, or like Naruto forums and stuff like that, just various anime discussions, like it was never really like it was like how does this character beat this character, this Logia character, or whatever. You just wouldn't really reference Sea Prism Stone because that's kind of like, well, how do you beat Superman? Like fucking kryptonite, right? Like that's not really interesting to the discussion of like if you're trying to talk about how would it's more like how can a character more honestly defeat the character, if that makes sense. So I'm just painting the picture of what it was like discussing Logias back then. Does that make sense? Anyway, do you think it's possible for Smoker to get King's Hockey with his personality? I don't think. I think Smoker's got a very bold personality that doesn't like taking orders or taking shit from anyone. He told the world government to eat shit. So I think he's like, it's frustrating because it feels like he's exactly the type of character that Oda could have developed down the line to have Conqueror's Haki. It just feels so ludicrous to talk about him having it now because it's like, one, he hasn't had iconic scenes where he really shows a ton of willpower and conviction. I think the most I can think of was him telling the world government to eat shit, which I do think that right there is kind of King's Haki poster child behavior. But Oda just hasn't written him like that or with that sort of conviction or gravitas since then. So I don't know. If Oda wants him to have it, he can always write Smoker coming back to have it, but it just feels like with how mistreated the character has been lately, it feels off, you know? I don't want to get into Admirals versus Naruto or whatever. I'm talking about discussions that people used to have. Like even if I viewed them as like silly claims or whatever, but it would all like whenever One Piece was being debated versus other universes, Admirals were always like One Piece fans ace in the hole, if that makes sense. Like it was like I would see it like One Piece versus Bleach, etc. It'd be like, well, the fucking Logi, like fucking Logias, how are they gonna fucking deal with that or whatever? Like you can't, lol, what are the Bleach characters gonna do? The Admirals, blah 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 blah, right? Like that. I'm just referencing that. I'm not trying to argue whether Bleach characters. I'm sure Bleach characters could fuck up, Admirals, right? Bleach characters are fucking crazy, but I'm just saying that that was like the whole Logia element. It was the same way that when people argue Jujutsu Kaisen characters versus other series, right? Gojo kind of gets put into his own category because he has an ability that is like just fundamentally more unique and different to deal with. So with One Piece, it was like you could argue One Piece characters versus other series, and that would be different than arguing like Logia characters versus other series. Does that make sense? Um, I think that this defeat, I'd go ahead and put it in a B. I think it was I think it was like surprising that it happened for sure. Part of it, it's hard for me to rate because I actually knew it was going to happen. I read some spoiler online or something like that, which I was reading the One Piece wiki as a kid. I don't know. So I kind of knew it was going to happen, so I can't rate it the same way as other people. I think people don't think about this one as much. I think it's just people remember that Luffy's lost twice to Crocodile. So I'd put it in B. I'm going to go ahead and put this in A. The Lucci loss, honestly, I might put this in B. Because it was kind of like with the Lucci loss, it already felt like the Straw Hats were just down. It felt like, yeah, it was like surprising, but it just felt like the Lucci loss was the cherry on top, if that makes sense. It already felt like the Straw Hats were beaten down. It felt like Luffy was just like at rock bottom ever since fighting Usopp. And then after that, we kind of kept seeing Luffy. Like, it was just like, it wasn't the usual Luffy that we saw after that. Because after this, he was struggling with the Gale La Company and fucking Frankie. he was just kind of generally looking pathetic after that for a while. He was struggling with Galila Company. He was struggling with Frankie. Then he goes to fight CP9. He's already struggling with Bluno. It kind of just felt like Lucci. To me, it just felt like Lucci just crushed, like taking out a, you know, taking out a man who's already like a shadow of himself. But I don't know. Maybe people disagree. Bleach's abilities are crazy later on in the story. Think of the audio onlys. Okay, you're right. I think the Aokiji loss I put in A. I think it was a good loss. It was cool to see how far off from an admiral he was. I mean, the Sabaody loss has to be an S. Marineford, obviously S. Should we drop Crocodile down a tier, actually, and just keep Sabaody and Marineford in S? Because those are kind of next level, right? The Magellan loss is brutal. I almost want to do this. I almost want to go ahead and do this. Because this with the Magellan loss, the stakes were so high and Luffy was so desperate. Like Luffy was literally like alpha, like he was wanting to. He was so desperate to get to Ace. I would put this up here. He was so desperate to get to Ace. He was doing everything. He was fighting Magellan, and it like he was on a roll, and Impel Down's difficulties were getting higher and higher, but they kept dealing with him. And then finally, he fights Magellan himself, and Magellan's ability just feels so unfair. And Luffy's giving it his all. He's like so desperate. He's like, I'll give up my arms if I need to. And Magellan just crushes him. Magellan beat Luffy walking next level aura farming. Yeah, the Magellan loss was just so brutal. I think like the losses where it just feels like Luffy had so much on the line. I don't know. The Caesar loss, I think, is a fucking joke. It's a loss that it's Luffy's worst loss on the list by far. It is the only time that I would say Luffy definitely. It's the only time Luffy lost to a character that is 100% weaker than him, and not just weaker than him, significantly weaker than him. You know, and it just felt like a for the plot necessary plot loss. It was like most losses feel good because they establish the threat of the villain. They humble Luffy in a way. They set the stakes, etc. This loss felt like a BS loss because Luffy's like actually beating the shit out of Caesar in this fight, and then it was just like, oh well, we need to have some tension, so you know. Magellan straight up hoed Luffy, says Ender. Yeah, I agree. Doflamingo loss, I'd put here. It's pretty. It's actually very forgettable. I remember someone saying they don't even remember it. I would almost I wouldn't put it in D because like it does show off Doflamingo's fighting style pretty well. Maybe I'm gonna go ahead and put this here. Do we feel like this is right? The second crocodile loss, and I'm gonna go ahead and put this here. Like this is the tier I'd put at like solid, impactful, did the necessary job at the time. You know, these I'd say like are great losses. These are like all-time great fictional losses, if that makes sense. I still say I put out a whole video talking about Marineford. What Luffy goes through at Marineford is the worst I've ever seen a hero just like what do you call uh broken, if that makes sense. Um, like you can be like worse stuff happened, like did you know that Guts was raped and stuff like that? Like yeah, but I'm just saying the emotional journey that Oda puts us through with Luffy for like 50 plus chapters is like ridiculous to end it with a loss. Like I don't think I've ever seen a hero jump through that many hoops and like get knocked down and picked back up over and over again. Like normally when you have a hero do that sort of like gauntlet and go through that cycle that many times of like knock down, get back up, knock down, get back up, like keep pushing, keep trucking, keep showing willpower, spirit, etc. And you do it that many times in a row, it's to have your hero win in the end. This is the first time I've seen an author do it this many times and then just have it be a loss. Put it this way, like put it even simpler. I can't think of a storyline where it's a gigantic saga and the entire storyline is a rescue arc about saving somebody, and then the person dies in the end. I can't think of that. I don't think of it. I don't know if there's an equivalent. First Kaido's A. First Kaido's definitely A. First Kaido's definitely A. I think this might be the best one outside of Sabaody Marineford. Gus stays. It was absolutely the worst I've ever seen in fiction. Guts stays getting in horrible situations, so it's normal for him. Yeah. Natty Light says it's the greatest breaking of a hero of all time. Yeah, because to me, you have to scale it relative to what the hero normally experiences and what the story normally is, right? So 500 chapters, you're writing Luffy as like always coming out on top. Like this invincible sort of like, yeah, he gets beaten up and fucked up sometimes, but it's always ending with triumph. And then you just put him through like 100 chapters of pain, which is fucking insane. Like, it's just no break. Like, there are some breaks, but like the majority of the chapter 500 to chapter 600 is just pain for Luffy, which is just wild for a character. And pain when it matters the most, which is saving his brother, which is just wild for the story that One Piece is. Sasuke retrieval arc? Oh, Sasuke died at the end? I didn't fucking know that. Fuck me. I thought that the rest of the story... God knows who the fuck Naruto is fighting at the end. Because it turns out Sasuke died at the end of Sasuke retrieval arc. Thonic says, at the end of the series, Magellan remains an undefeated foe that no-diffed Luffy. I mean, some of these losses, yeah, I think that Luffy won't get the run back, like Aokiji, Magellan probably, Kuma, Sentomaru, whatever. JR182, thanks for the 5. Since we're talking about fights, why do you think the Luffy versus Katakuri is so controversial? Do you think perception of the fight has gotten better or worse? I feel like perception of the fight got better because at the time it was viewed as very, very controversial. I think that was a point in time that... So the tricky thing with that is that at that point in time, there was a lot of factors. Okay, so... where to begin? Up till then, right? Anytime Luffy had fought a character who was straight up stronger than him, right? So you gotta remember the type of story that we're reading. Anytime Luffy had fought a character that is straight up stronger than him, be that Crocodile, Lucci, Doflamingo, whoever, right? The rule was Luffy takes the L and then comes back stronger and more equipped and wins the next time. Or maybe it takes 2 tries, like with Crocodile or something, right? So like, but each time with Luffy's fights, right, you see like he lost to Crocodile, he comes back with more moves and more tricks up his sleeve against Crocodile, both of his next rounds. With Lucci, he loses, but he comes back with gears and everything, right? With Doflamingo, he loses early on, but then he comes back and now he's like, nah, I'm gonna use Gear 4th and stuff, right? The Katakuri fight was the first time that Oda was doing a lot of things. It's the first fight in One Piece where Luffy gets his power-up over the course of the fight, okay? So that in itself was a little bit of a different vibe because the fight starts, Luffy is clearly outmatched against this opponent, and so readers kind of feel like, okay, well, Katakuri should finish him off or something like that, right? But the fight keeps on going, and I think part of it is that Oda really struggled to make it reasonable, I guess you could say, that Luffy's just like, it's like 15 chapters straight of Luffy just taking damage from Katakuri, and like really struggling to dodge or get hits in or whatever, but it's just going on and on and on and on, right? And the angle Oda wanted was for Luffy to get stronger over the course of the fight, and I think Oda did that well in retrospect, but you got to remember that, like, it was a few things going on, right? So, like, already people are kind of like, Katakuri's stronger than Luffy. Like, why isn't Oda calling it raps? You know, like, it just started to feel unreasonable to people at a certain point where, like, week after week, you're reading Luffy, like, clumsily dodging Katakuri, but then still getting hit with stuff, like, still getting pummeled, and it's just like, in any other scenario, Oda would just write, like, okay, Luffy got knocked out or whatever, and now we move on to the next thing, right? Or like he needs to train and get strong. A lot of people are like, he needs to train and get stronger, or at least, like, knock him out, like, have round 1 end or something like that, because it was just the first time that Oda had Luffy up against an opponent that's above him and clearly demonstrating that they're above him, but there's no sort of resolution. It's just going on, and Luffy just, because of writing reasons, Luffy's just not being taken out, right? Um, so that's number one. Number two is that this is the first time Oda introduces the concept of Haki blooms. So I remember at the time, now Haki blooms are just accepted in the story, but things are taken differently when they're first introduced. So again, we're kind of used to Luffy having to go back, regroup, get some new tricks up his sleeve, and then come back to beat the villain, right? And even with Haki and everything like that, our understanding was Luffy needed to go through a 2-year time skip to train and master his Haki, right? Like, Luffy went through he went through the fucking gauntlet in all of everything from Sabaody through Marineford, and at no point did he just randomly master armament or observation Haki, right? Like, he just was the same strength all the way throughout, right? Against Katakuri, Oda suddenly introduces this concept of Haki blooms, which is Haki only blooms in battle, right? Like, that's where you can really increase your Haki, right? This is a new concept. So you got to keep that in mind at the time why this was so controversial week to week, which is just that, first of all, Luffy's up against an opponent that everybody feels like he should lose to, right? He's really struggling. For whatever reason, the opponent just can't put Luffy down. It's just not happening, right? Luffy's just seemingly able to take infinite amounts of damage. So we're just watching kind of a fight that's kind of just a beatdown / a runaway fest for a long time, with Luffy struggling and yada yada. But then on top of that, it's like, okay, well, how is Luffy, if Luffy's supposed to win, how is he supposed to win? And then Oda's introducing a new concept right then, which is that, like, well, good news that Luffy's struggling, because turns out you can actually upgrade your Haki in fights, and that's the best way to upgrade your Haki. And it's like, well, this is fucking news to us. You never told us that before. So does that make sense? It's kind of like, it's standard stuff for shonen. Like, it happens regularly that characters get power-ups in fights. But I think it was it's just how One Piece had been written so far, which is that we're not used to Luffy getting power-ups in fights. Haki's a whole new power system, right? So far, what we've been told is that Haki's something you really have to train to get good at. But now it is dropping on us conveniently at the time that Luffy's struggling for a crazy long amount of time that, like, well, he can just get a Haki upgrade. So it's like, okay, well, I remember there were so many funny quotes and memes about that, which is like, anything's possible with a Rayleigh flashback, you know, like, if this character is struggling, all we need is a Rayleigh flashback. Those jokes continued on to the next arc. I remember, like, against Kaido and stuff like that, it was like, well, all we need is a Rayleigh flashback to get Luffy to whatever. Again, now we're used to Haki bloom, so now you never see jokes about stuff like that. But at that point in time, there were two factors going on there, right? And then the third thing that was really the straw that broke the camel's back was Luffy getting stabbed with Katakuri's trident. And I've seen people say stuff like, look, in retrospect, the stab, you can excuse it. It doesn't look that bad or whatever. At the time, one, the stab looked so insanely bad that the overwhelming consensus in all the comments, Reddit thread, YouTube, whatever, overwhelming consensus to the point that it was like fucking obvious was that, of course, Luffy can't keep going after this stab. This must be a future sight vision. So everybody was just of the opinion that either Katakuri actually got him and Luffy's done, or two, this is not a real stab, because obviously, logically, Oda can't sell us on the belief that, like, Luffy actually just got, like, a literal hole in his stomach and is still fighting. Therefore, this must be Oda illustrating future sight for us, right? Boy, were we wrong. Luffy did actually just get stabbed. And again, you might argue that, well, maybe the stab wasn't that bad or something. Look, Luffy's been stabbed at other points. When Luffy's been stabbed like that at other points, like with the Crocodile or Lucci scenario, the fight's over. He's done with the fight. The fight is finito, right? Because you don't really, like, it's already BS enough that Luffy can just go eat some meat and be back the next day to fight at full strength from these stabs. But now you're expecting us to believe that not only can Luffy just be stabbed straight through the stomach like that, keep going, get new upgrades, ultimately win the fight, but he does this after already having suffered 15 chapters of Katakuri beating the shit out of him, right? So, like, the stab was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back in that sense, because it was cumulative. We'd all like people had already been feeling that Luffy had taken such an insane amount of punishment that it had now passed the point of suspension of disbelief that he can just keep going like normal. And then it's like, all right, it already feels like you've gone way past what's reasonable, Oda. And then Oda throws this like, Oda's like, no, I'm not even close. And then he throws like this fucking like freight train at us. It's hard to explain. It would be like if you're already like trying to bench like, 225 or something. It's like this is about it. I can't do any more or whatever. And then it's like, you can't. Well, here's a fucking semi truck I'm gonna drop on top of you. And it's just like, now this is unreasonable, right? So that was kind of ridiculous to people, that it's like it wasn't Future Sight, it actually just happened, and Luffy's just gonna keep fighting. And then people didn't like the way that Oda balanced it out, which was Katakuri then stabbing himself. I really liked that. I thought it was a great character moment for Katakuri. But you already have people feeling like this is kind of a BS fight, and now the villain is like fucking stabbing himself through the same way he stabbed Luffy through, and it's just like, now it just feels like we're getting to like we're far past the point of most people having suspension of disbelief. So now it's just this is in this brand new territory where it's like, okay, I guess the fight's still going. And then slowly Luffy's getting Future Sight down, slowly he's getting Future Sight down. So that's already several strikes against this fight while it's going on, right? But then the last two, we're not even done yet. The last two strikes are that everybody is still excited at the prospect of like, okay, despite all of this quote unquote BS that's happened with this fight so far, Future Sight, we're really excited to see how Oda handles this new ability once Luffy's using it. Because, again, everyone was so excited with the stab moment because we thought it was the Future Sight moment. It wasn't. So we're like, okay, a Future Sight stuff must be coming. And then the problem is, like, that was the main draw of the fight, I think, seeing Luffy's growth into Future Sight. Once Luffy masters Future Sight and it becomes Snake Man versus Katakuri, I think Snake Man versus Katakuri is I think it's the best choreographed fight in One Piece. In terms of just pure action, I think it's Oda at his peak choreography. But the Future Sight element is basically just taken out of the like, Oda doesn't deliver on the thing that people were excited to see on, which is like, what does it look like when two Future Sight users are battling, right? And everybody thought that it would be kind of something like, oh, we'll be seeing like visions or like lots of creativity in that department. But instead, Oda kind of just chooses to write it like, okay, well, once they both have Future Sight, then it's just neutralized. So now it's like a normal fight. So that really annoyed people, which was just like the moment that we thought was a really cool introduction to Future Sight, which was the stab. That wasn't Future Sight. That was actually just Luffy getting stabbed when everybody thought that would be idiotic. And then the point where Luffy's actually got Future Sight down and now we want to see him use it, Oda doesn't really show anything. He kind of just writes a normal fight. You know what I mean? And just tells us that Future Sight's being used, Like, maybe there's a couple panels of Katakuri having, like, an aha moment, which indicates he used Future Sight, but for the most part, it's just two characters slugging it out, right? So what seemed like it was heading towards at least a very cerebral and creative type of battle, instead just turned out to be a very well-drawn action chapter rather than that. And then the final thing that made people dislike the fight was basically like, okay, if you don't have Future Sight, okay, how does it end? There were minor complaints that we didn't see the final clash between King Cobra and Katakuri's final move. I remember there were minor complaints about that. People wanted to see that visually, but Oda cuts away. He off-screens that for some reason, right? The final critique was just like, Luffy never really ultimately truly beat Katakuri. It felt like Katakuri just kind of just stopped having his heart in the fight, and he just falls down and lets Luffy go by. Which is good for symbolism and writing and everything like that, but it doesn't feel as satisfying of a conclusion to, like, a lot of One Piece's other fights, you know what I mean? So, to sum up, while I liked the Luffy versus Katakuri fight a lot in retrospect, and I actually really enjoyed it while I was reading it week to week, a lot of the complaints are, from start to finish, Luffy taking a crazy, unreasonable amount of damage for the majority of the fight without really making progress, but no real logistical reason as to why he just is able to take this amount of damage. He just is. Normally, Oda would have Luffy lose and then come back stronger, but Oda just has Luffy take, like, countless chapters of punishment, which is just like, okay, well, does Katakuri's haki just suck? Like, what the fuck is going on here? He just can't deal any damage or whatever. Right? There's that. Then the introduction of concept of haki blooms when we didn't know that was a thing, which people felt like was a plot convenience at the time. Some people felt like it was an ass pull. It's not. It's just, I'm just saying the negative critiques at the time. Then the stabbing moment, which was already at the end of a long period of people feeling frustrated that Luffy's taking so much damage. And then Oda heaps on top of that. And then the fucking Katakuri damaging himself to even things out, which you either loved or hated because you thought it was stupid after all this. Then the poor implementation of Future Sight after building the whole fight around that concept. And then the anticlimactic finish, which was just the villain just being like, here, damn, I'm done fighting you, right? So from start to finish, the way I described it was basically makes the fight sound terrible. Again, I really like the fight. For me, it's my second favorite fight in One Piece. But I kind of went through and just described all of the negative emotions that I was seeing people say online. And this was not the consensus. A lot of people liked it, but this was a lot of the critiques that were going on. I think there's counter arguments to all of these critiques, but you got me on a tangent of what the negatives were, so I did. Anyway. Morge thoroughly explaining sentiments and thoughts that mostly only exist for those who are reading the fight weekly. Yeah, the weekly experience is just a big part of that, because then you're lingering. It's such a different vibe where, like, every single week you're cutting back to Luffy versus Katakuri, and it's just Luffy getting punched over and over again, and then you cut away. Maybe there's a week where it's just Sanji and the Straw focus, and then you cut back, and then it's Luffy getting punched by Katakuri a bunch again, like, and then over and over. It's just like, because it's time, right? So it feels like you're taking so much time, it's being spent just seeing Luffy not really having updates outside of getting the shit beat out of him. And then, like, you're waiting on him to figure out this Future Sight thing, which we just found out you can bloom in battle. And then you're like, is he figuring out Future Sight? Because there's no way he just got stabbed like that on top of everything. And it's like, oh no, he did get stabbed. Okay, now Katakuri's stabbing himself. It was controversial shit at the time, When you're able to read it or watch it all in one flow, I imagine it's just different because you're binging it, so you kind of know that it's not going to be an eternity of just watching Luffy get beat up. You know things are going to progress and shit's going to happen or whatever. But week after week, it just sticks with you in your head that Luffy is really out of his depth here, but Oda's not ending it, and he's just artificially, kind of. I really liked it for Katakuri, the character, says Elihu. I think that's the big saving grace of the fight, which is that it's actually good for Luffy's character and Katakuri's character. It's great for Katakuri's character. Like, it is, in terms of character writing, it is maybe the best fight for both ends, if you take both ends into account, that Luffy's ever had. Computer Visa says, I want more Morge weekly One Piece conversation sessions. It's great since most of us weren't fans back then. I can't promise an accurate retelling of everything, but I can give you my thoughts of things as they were happening when I remember, like, for sections that I remember. I remember this Luffy versus Katakuri section was very controversial at the time. But I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. Anyway. A lot of this was what prompted my first big analysis video, which is why Whole Cake Island was underrated. Which is one of the videos that got me some traction when I was starting out. Probably the first video that kind of, I would say, broke containment, in the sense that, like, other people started talking about me then. Like, not just people who were watching my channel or whatever, but other YouTubers noticed me, because, like, everybody was hating on Whole Cake Island back then. I had put out a video of why Whole Cake Island was underrated, and that led to people who watched my video going out and, like, for better or worse, critiquing other YouTubers and being like, you had a poor assessment of Whole Cake Island because this guy Morge said this or whatever. And then that was not the best way to be introduced to other YouTubers, because, like, you're not being done any favors if, like, the first time you hear about this other up-and-coming person is when their viewers are coming to tell you that you suck and this other guy's great. So that wasn't the best thing, so I had to, but no press is bad press, or whatever the saying is, or all press is good press. Anyway, it ended up getting me into the Reverie that first time around. Okay, this next defeat, how do people feel about this one? I feel like this next defeat goes here, or do people feel like it's higher? Because I think this one's a pretty iconic one too, in a sense. I just don't think it's as good as Act 1, so I think I'd put it here. The fact it was off screen, I'd put it here. And then finally we got Emu's placement. Where do we want to put Emu? Where do we miss Dritz? Yeah, Dritz hunted me down for uh a 1-to-1 video to debate that or whatever, but then we actually ended up getting along quite well. Because like our points of contention were actually just faith in Oda as a writer. So a lot of the things that Dritz didn't like, which was like poor focus on the strats, yada yada yada. I was like, oh well, I think a lot of that's coming in the next arc in Wano. Therefore, like I'm actually not holding Whole Cake Island accountable to having those things, if that makes sense. So that was a big part of it. He was less interested in the themes of Whole Cake Island as much as like the writing, like the minutia or whatever. And most of the things that he disliked about the arc, I actually also disliked, just not to the same degree. Like he'd be like, "Well, this was really bad," and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I also didn't like that, but I love this," or something like that. So it's much easier to have conversations with people when you actually already think similar things, but just the degree of emotion that you have about them vary. Does that make sense? Like, because you agree on the same points for the most part. There was like a lot of points we didn't overlap, but you agree on the same points for the most part. It's just like how much you weight them, you know? Anyway. Emu. I think S, A, or B are the only options, right? I think where I would put it would be. I would put it in A. I would put it in A, is where I would put it. But I think I'd put it at the bottom of A. If I were to rank, I think this one's number one. One, two. Is Kaido one-shotting Luffy cooler or Crocodile? This here. Hard to judge without the full fallout of the loss as well, says Manifest Joe. Yeah, because honestly, Luffy might be back up next chapter. We don't even know. Okay, we got a nice split. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put in an A because everything kind of averages out to A. I kind of put it at the bottom of A. I think I'd put it at the bottom of A. I think I'd put it at the bottom of A. I think I'm giving it a little extra points because it's it doesn't, so like the ones that are above all kind of do something special in my opinion. Like this was very emotionally like this was very emotionally like visceral, like watching kind of like this play out. Luffy being like, I'm gonna sacrifice my hands, I'm gonna give everything. Like he's just, it's so gradual and painful. Like this is like Luffy's most gradual and sort of painful loss, I guess. Like physically, it feels like his body's slowly melting and just succumbing to poison, and like he's losing his eyes, his sight, sound, etc. Right. So this one was very visceral in that sense. This one was just crazy because like you were waiting for Luffy to fight a Yonko fight. Like Kaido has so much hype built up around him, and this was the first time seeing him in action. Like so much hype built up around him. World's strongest creature, yada yada. And it did something new. We'd seen Luffy lose a million times. We'd never seen him get one-shotted. Never seen him get one-shotted. So that was just like Oda delivered in a manner that far surpassed people's expectations. This was obviously, nothing needs to be said. Like, this is Luffy's first truly brutal loss in the series. Sabaody Marineford, obviously the most, like, traumatizing in terms of what he is losing in the process. So this one, I think barely I'd put into this tier. I think I'd just barely put it in this tier. Because it's like, I kind of put it in this tier just because of, like, the magnitude of what it is. Like, it's the sun god versus the devil. Like, it just feels like we've kind of reached the end game, end of the world. It's like, it feels like Nika losing to the devil. So there's like added sort of weight to that in a sense. And it's Luffy fighting the strongest character in the world that we know of, basically. So there's just more contextual sort of like significance to what happened right here. And I think it also adds the fact that we haven't seen, like, people have said, like, Luffy lost a lot in Wano, so what do you mean he needs to get humbled? He'd never been humbled in Gear 5th. So I think that was also important because Gear 5th is Luffy's, like, happy-go-lucky, silly, like, everything's a joke sort of form. But this one was a defeat where it was just like, it finally put a stop to that, which hadn't really happened. So I still put it in this tier. I'd put it at the weakest out of the ones in this tier for me, personally. Alex Sator says, I think this one is just thematically and tonally unique to One Piece, like Tom and Jerry versus Berserk. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's like, I agree. Yeah, like Luffy's doing all these silly, goofy things. It is, like I was saying, it's because of the Gear 5th loss, right? So seeing that happen to Luffy in Gear 5th is just kind of jarring because it's just all of this silly, goofy cartoon shit, and then he's just being impaled again, like against Crocodile. Anyway, continuing on. I think we gotta call the stream because I went a bit longer than I had initially intended, but I had fun. Talked about a lot of stuff here. Yeah. I gotta call the stream because I'm ready to eat dinner and everything. But yeah. This Friday we'll do chapter predictions. Pirate King podcast is coming out tomorrow. Sorry about the schedule stuff, but it is coming out tomorrow, so just watch out for tomorrow. And yeah, with that, I will talk to you all later.